the San Francisco Ethics Commission. Our minutes will reflect that this hybrid meeting is being held pursuant to the 45th Supplement to Mayoral Proclamation declaring the existence of a local emergency dated February 25th, 2020, and is being held subject to the conditions of that proclamation. Today's meeting is being live cablecast on SFGov TV 2 and streamed live online on sfgovtv.org/ethicslive. For public comment, members of the public may attend in person or may participate by phone or the webcast platform as explained in our agenda document. Mr. Moderator, can you please explain how the remote public comment will be handled before we start the meeting?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Public comment will be available on each item on this agenda. Each member of the public will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. For those attending in person, opportunities to speak during the public comment period will be made available here in room 408, City Hall. For those attending remotely, public comment period can also be provided via phone by calling 1-415-655-0001. Again, the phone number is 1-415-655-0001. Access code is 2484-103-9790. Again, access code 2484-103-9790, followed by the pound sign. Then press pound again to join as an attendee. For callers, you will hear a beep when you are connected to the meeting. You will be automatically muted and in listening mode only. When your item of interest comes up, dial *3 to raise your hand to be added to the public comment line. You will then hear, "You have raised your hand to ask a question. Please wait until the host calls on you." The line will be silent as you wait your turn to speak. Ensure that you are in a quiet location. Before you speak, mute the sound of any equipment around you, including television, radio, or computer. It is especially important that you mute your computer if you are watching via the web link to prevent feedback and echo when you speak. When the system message says your line has been unmuted, this is your turn to speak. You will hear staff say, "Welcome, caller." We encourage you to state your name clearly. As soon as you begin speaking, you will have 3 minutes to provide your public comment, 6 minutes if you're online with an interpreter. You will hear a bell go off when you have 30 seconds remaining. If you change your mind and to withdraw yourself from the public comment line, press *3 again. You will hear the system say you have lowered your hand. Once your 3 minutes has expired, staff will thank you and mute you. You will hear your line has been muted. Attendees who wish to speak during other public comment periods may stay on the line and listen for the next public comment opportunity and should raise their hands to enter the public comment line by pressing *3 when the next item of interest comes up. Public comment may also be submitted in writing and will be shared with the Commission after this meeting has concluded and will be included as part of the official meeting file. Written comments should be sent to ethics.commission@sfgov.org. Once again, written comments should be sent to ethics.commission@sfgov.org. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Moderator. I now call the meeting to order, and please call agenda item number 1, which is roll call.
Commissioners, please verbally indicate your presence by saying aye after your name is called. Commissioner Bush?
Aye.
Commissioner Flores-Feng?
Aye.
Commissioner Finlive?
Aye.
Chair Lee?
Aye.
Commissioner Romano?
Aye.
Chair Lee, with 5 members present and accounted for, you have a quorum.
Thank you. And let the record reflect that Commissioners Bush and Finloff are participating remotely. So now that we have a quorum, let's go to agenda item number 2, which is public comment on matters not appearing on the agenda. Moderator, can you check?
Yes, please stand by. We are excuse me. We are checking to see if there are any callers on the queue. Please stand by. For remote participants, if you joined the meeting early to listen to the proceedings, now is the time to get in line to speak. Members of the public who are already online and wish to provide public comment on matters not appearing on the agenda item under item 2 should now dial *3 or raise your hand in WebEx. If you have not already done so, to be added to the public comment line. Once you are in the queue and standing by, the system will prompt you when it's your turn to speak. We also ask that you please address your comments to the commission as a whole and not to individual members. Please stand by. Madam Chair, there's no callers in the queue.
Okay. Now is to consent calendar numbers items 3, 4, 5, and 6, which is resolution on continuation of remote hybrid commission meetings, draft minutes of the Ethics Commission's October 14, 2022 regular meeting, draft minutes of the Ethics Commission November 18, 2022 regular meeting, and the Executive Director's report. Colleagues, as you know, if there's no separate discussion on the consent calendar, do I see any members of the commission who wish to take any items out for separate discussion?
No.
No, okay. Commissioner Bush? No? Okay.
Aye.
Oh,
Are we voting for the consent calendar?
not
I'm
yet.
voting
You don't. Okay. Thank you. So let's have public comment on the consent calendar item, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, we are checking to see if there are callers in the queue who wish to discuss any consent calendar item. Please stand by. Madam Chair, there's no callers in the queue.
Okay, public comment is closed. Do I entertain any motions to approve consent calendars on items 3, 4, 5, and 6?
So moved.
I so moved.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
On the motion to adopt the consent calendar, Commissioner Bush,
Aye.
Commissioner Flores-Fang,
Aye.
Commissioner Finliff,
Aye.
Chair Lee,
Aye.
Commissioner Romano.
Aye.
Madam Chair, with 5 votes in the affirmative and 0 votes opposed, the motion is approved unanimously.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners. I now call agenda item number 7, which is discussion and possible action on Executive Director recruitment process, which may, and we have, do we have a representative? Okay. We do have a representative from the Department of DHR who will be giving us an update. I think Mr. Sean Shomax is here, or is he on?
Good morning, Commissioner. Good morning, President Lee. Sean Sherburne with Department of Human Resources. I'm the Assistant Director of Employment Services, so happy to help the Commission with this discussion and any questions you all may have.
Thank you. Can you give us the latest update regarding the executive search firm, please?
Certainly. So we received one bid for the executive search for the executive director of the Ethics Commission. And because I'm doing this for 4 other commissions, the name of the executive search firm is escaping me at this particular moment.
I think it's CPS.
It was CPS, yes. So thank you for that. They're an executive search firm the city has done quite a bit of work with. They're currently also supporting the Department of the Environment with their executive director search. Because I've worked with them before, I can share that they would do an excellent job representing the commission, helping this commission find the next executive director. And so we are, with that one proposal, looking for the commission to give us direction as to whether or not to pursue the contract that they submitted, and then move to the next steps in the process, which would be to set up a meeting with CPS Human Resources for this executive recruitment. And ideally, we would be able to take advantage of your of the institutional knowledge your outgoing executive director has as a partner with CPS and your commission. So at this juncture, I believe the packet that you all have includes the contract, which outlines the steps that they will take, provides references, and overall cost structure and deliverables. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any commissioner questions.
I want to first thank Mr. Sherburne for his diligence and responsiveness in working with us during the past few weeks. As you mentioned, we have one bid that was received, and if we can open up for any questions from my fellow commissioners, let me call on Commissioner Bush and Commissioner Finlaf since they're on remote.
This is Commissioner Bush. I have a few comments to make about the proposal that we received. I think the first comment is that having received only one submission, that we need a greater outreach for other submissions to come in. So I would suggest that we not act to consider the proposal that's before us at this time. I would note, however, that the proposal before us refers to the bidder's experience dealing with the minority communities of African Americans and Spanish-speaking communities, but no mention of Asian or languages other than Spanish or English. And as you all know, San Francisco has a very politically active and important community of those who speak Chinese, Tagalog, or other Asian languages, which are not cited in this proposal. I also would note that we have a depth of former commissioners who are not cited as examples of people to be contacted and solicited for their points of view. And I think that they would all offer a great deal. We have a need to reach out to underserved communities. I note in particular residents of public housing and others who are receiving public aid of some kind and who are not actively engaged with the Ethics Commission. And this is an opportunity for us to correct that and engage them. And I don't see a plan to do that in the proposal before us. Those are some of the concerns I have with this specific proposal. But the larger issue that I'm raising is whether we could be reaching out to groups such as COGL, which is the community of ethics organizations in the state, and others for their input. I was involved in 2015 when Director Pelham was hired. We found that the proposal that we had before us was inadequate, and we had to solicit changes in the proposal, which ultimately delivered us with Leanne Sullivan, who was not a consideration in the materials that we originally received. So those are comments that I would like to be on the record with. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bush. Commissioner Finlaff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Sherburne, for being here. I think Commissioner Bush raises some good points, but I'm also aware that we only have one firm applying at the moment, and we want to move expeditiously. So my only real question is whether Mr. Sherburne and DHR think that this organization, CPS Consulting, if they think that they're a capable group, then I have no problem at all retaining that firm. And to address some of Commissioner Bush's points, I think we as commissioners and staff and stakeholders should do our own independent outreach to POGL and groups like that. I don't expect a search firm to do all of that. So I think this is the only option before us. And unless there are any red flags that DHR can point to, I don't see why we wouldn't move forward with this, given the kind of the time urgency that we're facing. Thank you.
Maybe we can hear from the rest of the commissioners before Mr. Sherburne can respond to the questions.
Great idea. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions or concerns?
I would agree with Commissioner Finlove. I think that given the timeline and our ability to concurrently reach out to groups that we're interested in hearing from, I wouldn't see a reason to not move forward unless, again, there are any red flags that maybe we aren't privy to.
Okay. I just want to remind my colleagues, we do have a very, very ambitious schedule. My understanding is all of the potential firms were contacted and only one submitted a bid. So I don't foresee by extending the search period, we would be able to get any more bids. And as we have discussed the last couple of meetings, the search firm is not going to find us the candidate. We have to make sure that we do our due diligence, and we also have to be very proactive as well, reaching out to our contacts, making sure that the firm will be able to do a national, very comprehensive search based on our recommendations as well. So we cannot rely on just what they've done, but we need to really make sure that they can reach out to a very selective group for this really unique position. And that goes to the community engagement as well. We have discussed the need for all of us to pull together our contact list, our network, so that when the firm begins the outreach, the advertisements and everything else, it's not based on their network, it's based on our input as well. So, Mr. Sherburne, do you have any response to the questions? And also, if you can give us a timeline on how we can proceed with submitting the contract and proceeding to work with them, I would imagine each one of us would want to meet with them, either by phone or what have you, just to share with them our perspective before they put together a formal outreach plan. And I would imagine, since we have a very ambitious schedule, I would like to see something beginning as early as next Monday for some of us. So do you think that would be possible? And what is the procedure for us to approve the contract and for the contract to take place? Who is going to be the contact person with us? Will you be still engaged with this process, or is this just between us and CPS?
Great, thank you. Thank you, President Lee. So I was going to work backwards through the questions, but I'll kind of take them as as I can. And so please, definitely, you and your fellow commissioners, feel free to poke me if I missed anything. In terms of the one bid, we're seeing this across the board in the industry, when we're seeing this for other commissions within the city and county of San Francisco as well. It's just such a competitive space right now. And then in terms of the city's contracting, we have a number of executive search vendors that are already approved vendors with the city. So that's the group that we went out to. So not just for the Ethics Commission, but for other commissions, we are seeing one, if we're fortunate, two bids in some cases. So there isn't a wide network that we're going to. These are folks that are able to meet the expectations that the city has, and we have quite a number of expectations for contracting, but also are able to meet the timelines that this commission and other commissions have. And so they've put forward a timeline of 4 months from when this kicks off to when you would have an executive director in the chair or sitting. So I think that speaks to a little bit of why we only received one bid. But again, as I shared earlier, this is what we're seeing with other executive searches as well. It's hiring across the board, including at the executive level. And then, as I mentioned, I'm currently working not just with CPS Human Resources, but also with the executive team that will be supporting this commission. I find them very diligent, very mindful of timelines, very engaging. To the commission president's question about engagement, I believe they're going to want to kick off a meeting first with me, and then they're going to look for that meeting to then happen with, is it a representative of the Ethics Commission? Is there a selection committee to really start an engagement effort and an iterative discussion about how to move forward? They'll obviously want to meet individually with each one of the commissioners to help build a candidate profile, to get their thoughts on things. And then from there, they are going to be looking to the commission. What are the constituent groups that they should be engaging, and how should they do that? Should they be community forums? Should those be in person? Should they be virtual? Are there surveys? They're going to inquire about all of those things to make sure that all of the groups that this commission feels need to be engaged, that they are engaged. And it will start with individually with each one of you all to get a sense for what that's going to look like. I feel very confident that the timeline that they've put forward in the proposal is one that they can meet. And so to answer what I believe is one of the last questions that President Lee put forward, they will be the primary point driving, the CPS will be the primary person or persons driving this, and I will stay engaged in those meetings and with this commission to make sure that that we cross our T's and dot our I's. And then also just be a resource as well for the executive search firm as they move through the city's processes, which we all know, even though this is an executive recruitment, the city also still has a number of expectations. You all have a number of expectations, and I want to make sure that that CPS HR is aware of those and can navigate them and can do so adeptly to make sure that we meet that 4-month timeline.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sherburne. At our commission previous meetings, we had formed a search committee of 2 members to carry out the directives from the commission. So it seems likely that the committee, which is publicly noticeable for our activities, will be the point body to work with with you as well as CPS representatives. So do we have any other questions? If not, do I entertain a motion to approve this contract or this bid proposal?
I have a number of questions. I'm not ready to approve this contract at all. And I am concerned that we are moving more rapidly than the facts warrant. I would note that when this was done in 2015, the Ethics Commission was in a completely different state than it is now. Under Director Pelham, we have accelerated our staffing so that it's more than double of what it was then. We've also seen the voters add to the duties of the commission with new disclosure requirements and new restrictions on interested parties seeking to influence the city. So there's a different environment than we faced 5 years ago. And 5 years ago, we certainly did not run into this as a speed test. There's no reason in the world why this can't take a little additional time. As far as I understand, DHR has reached out to its existing list of approved bidders. It has not reached out to bidders or potential bidders who are not part of the routine thing. So have they gone to the FCPC? Have they gone to the Federal Elections Commission, where they're all deeply involved? Have they gone to groups like Common Cause? I don't believe so. Not to mention groups like MapLight that have emerged in the years since then. So I would urge that we hold off on approving anything and that we have a more robust outreach and a more robust understanding. As part of that, I've written up my recollection of the issues that confront us that need to be addressed and have not yet been addressed. I sent that to each of the commissioners, and I urge that it be added to the public record so that any member of the public can see the points that were raised in my memo. Thank you.
Can I ask Mrs. Sherburne to walk us through why we need to use a preferred vendors list, and if we were to go outside of the current list, what is the timeline for the commission to entertain another potential bidder?
So there are 11 vendors that the city has as part of their approved vendor list. That was an exhaustive RFP that was done within the last couple of years to make sure that we have bidders that can meet all of the contracting requirements and procurement requirements that the city has. I don't think there's enough time in this meeting to get into all of the contracting and procurement requirements, but it is lengthy. Because we have an approved vendor, because we have a list of approved vendors who've already competed in an RFP process, I couldn't begin to unpack what it would look like to open that up again. That would be something I'd have to go back to our team and potentially even the city administrator's office to see if that's even something that can be reopened at this juncture, or because that RFP is already concluded and we have these 11 vendors, which I think is an exhaustive list of all of the executive recruiters in this space that can do work, not just in California, but do work specifically within for San Francisco, given our contracting requirements, but also given that we are not able to do business with quite a large number of entities in states that are banned. So I can just share that aspect of that, but I'd have to talk to more knowledgeable people, or we'd have to engage more knowledgeable people on the city's contracting and procurement efforts. But for this commission, I can share that there are 11 approved vendors who've gone through an RFP process. We engaged those vendors to see if they would be able and willing to do this executive search for the Ethics Commission. And we received CPS Human Resources, which is a reputable firm. They do great work, and they're currently doing work for the Department of Environment.
Okay, thank you. So I think it's safe to say that if we were to open up the process to outside vendors, outside of the pre-approved vendors, we're looking at least a few months of timeline, right? At least a few months? 2 months minimum?
At the least, I like I said, I don't have a tremendous amount of familiarity with the city's contracting and procurement efforts. I think the first question would be more of a legal question. When we have closed contracts and we have vendors, whether the city could even go out to look for alternative vendors is not a question that I would be able to answer here. But I think your estimate of months plural is a solid estimate.
Okay, thank you.
Let me ask some questions for clarification. The city is in the process of trying to hire an executive director for several new commissions. I think streets is one of them. That process has been underway for how many months? Can DHR tell us? Mm-hmm. How many months have you been involved in the search for a new executive director?
Mm-hmm. Happy to answer that question. Thank you for asking it. There are actually 5 executive recruitments going on right now. It had been 6, streets and sanitation, prior to the voters passing a measure to move them back under the Department of Public Works, had been an executive recruitment. I met with that commission a couple weeks ago as we brought to close that executive recruitment effort, because they are no longer a independent department. They are now a division, again, under the Department of Public Works. I'm actively working with the Department of Public Works on their executive director recruitment. And that has been in the works for many months, but the commission, because of the ballot measure last month, decided it would be in their best interest to wait and see what action the voters took before moving forward. But now that the voters have taken that action, they are moving forward with their executive search as well. I'm also working, I mentioned the Department of Environment, the Department of Elections, I think many of you all know, is still deciding whether or not to move forward with an executive search firm. I believe they have a meeting on Monday, and then I will be engaging them in that effort, or continue to engage them. And then the other commission I'm working with is the new Department of Sheriff's Department oversight. They're hiring their Office of Inspector General, their department head. They also received one bid. So this has been an experience.
As I understand it, none of those agencies have nearly the complexity or the need for public interaction that ethics does. And yet, we're going to be on a track that's much faster and takes in less consideration than a department like street cleaning or elections. I obviously don't think that meshes up very well.
If I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
So I share Commissioner Bush's, or I understand Commissioner Bush's concerns. At the same time, I think that the priority needs to be to finding a good replacement as quickly as possible, and I would move to adopt this contract.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'm still sticking against that. Commissioner, Phillip, I'm speaking against that. While I appreciate your desire to move forward with a resolution prior to conclusion of my remarks.
Just for
What
the
I'm
record,
trying to say here,
that wasn't me,
What I-
Commissioner Bush. That was Commissioner
Yes,
Romano,
right.
not Commissioner Finlev.
I'm sorry. It's hard to tell from being on an iPhone.
Commissioner Bush, we have a motion on the floor, and the procedure is, let's entertain if there's a second, and then we will open up for public comment, and you can also comment before we vote. So do I have a second to this motion?
Seconded.
Okay. Mr. Moderator, can we open up for public comments on agenda item number 7?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are checking to see if there are any callers in the queue who wish to comment on item number 7. Please stand by. Madam Chair, there are no callers in the queue.
Okay, public comment closed. Colleagues, we have a motion on the floor to approve the executive search contract with CPS for them to proceed working with us as well as DHR ASAP. I understand Commissioner Bush wish to speak on this motion.
I do. Thank you. My concern is that we have not taken the necessary steps to understand where we are going in the next few years with the Ethics Commission. We're not simply trying to fill a position that meets what we have been doing, but rather meets the needs as we move forward, of which there are many that have yet to be met. I think that a serious review of the Ethics Commission's duties as we move forward has to be given due weight. And I would note that with all due respect to DHR, we have just filled a number of city department heads, most of which were filled because of criminal activities against the incumbent. And that's not a good record to stand on. So I would suggest that we take a deep breath and set out a time for us to first come to an agreement on what it is, the duties of the Ethics Commission as we project forward the next few years. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments before we take the vote? If no other comments, roll call, please.
On the motion to bid, Commissioner Bush,
No.
Commissioner Flores-Fang,
Aye.
Commissioner Finlev,
Aye.
Chair Lee,
Aye.
Commissioner Romano.
Aye.
Chair Lee, with 4 votes in the affirmative and 1 vote opposed, the motion is carried by 4 to 1, with Commissioner Bush in the dissent.
Thank you. Mr. Sherburne, as the commission has discussed at previous meetings, we individually and collectively and through the search committee, we will be taking a very active role working with you as well as CPS. With that, we definitely will be working on the job description, the outreach, the community engagement, all other aspects with you and the team. So please be advised that we will be contacting you Monday morning to schedule those meetings individually and with the committee. Again, thank you for your diligence, and we look forward to working with you very, very actively and proactively through hopefully the next couple of months before we find a ED.
I'd like to just note the fact that we had no public comments on this measure whatsoever. And that underscores the point I'm making, which is we are disconnected from the communities we serve. And there's something seriously wrong without taking the time to understand why and what we need to do to repair that. And a new executive director is the first step in that process. Thank you.
Okay, duly noted. Thank you. The next agenda item, I am going to take the prerogative to move to agenda item number 11, which is a potential closed session item, which is a scheduling issue. So, colleagues, the agenda item number 11 is potential closed session item, an update with labor negotiators. Would I need to read all the, okay. So let me find that.
Madam Chair,
Okay.
just to make sure I understand, you're moving to the closed session now?
Yes, we are moving to closed session now, and after that, we will take up agenda item number 8. I'm looking for. Cannot see.
Yes. Does she need to?
Yes, Chair Lee, if I might, just a procedural point. For the record and for any public comment, there, of course, would be an introduction to the closed session for the record as to why the closed session is required. And then also need to be a motion and action by the commission to go into closed session, which would require public comment on all matters related to this item before doing that. So I wanted to just flag that for you as you're taking it up as the next item.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to agenda item number 11. This item has been scheduled for the Commission's discussion and possible action. Employee relations staff from DHR and City Attorney Labor Attorneys have been invited to be with us today for this closed session item. The anticipated issue under negotiation is the status of the meeting to confer with the employee organization San Francisco MEA regarding the Ethics Commission's given ethics recommendations for city law. For purposes of this item today, there are 4 steps involved. First, under agenda item number 11A, we will receive public comment on all matters pertaining to agenda item number 10, including whether to meet in closed session. Second, we will then vote on whether to meet in closed session under California Government Code, Section 54957.6 and Sunshine Ordinance Section 67.10, E, to discuss labor negotiations. This will be an action item as noted in item B. Third, if a closed session is held, the Commission will initiate that closed session meeting to meet with the labor negotiator, and following that closed session, we will then reconvene in open session. Fourth, pursuant to Brown Act Section 54957.1 and Sunshine Ordinance Section 67.12, and as shown under agenda item, we will discuss and vote on the motion regarding whether or not to disclose any action taken or discussions held in closed session regarding the labor negotiations. So I just want to ask City Attorney Rossi, is there anything that you wish to add before we go to public comment?
No, Commissioner. You can
Thank
proceed.
you. Thank you. Let's take public comment on agenda item number 11, please.
Public comment on whether or not to go to closed
To go,
session.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, your earlier comments about how your calendar today is quite full. So I assume that's in function. I should take this off so people know who I am. I assume that is.
Hi, Charlie.
Hi, good to see everybody, by the way. Good morning, commissioners. And Madam Executive Director. It's good to see you. And I was wondering if this is your last meeting. Yes, I'm sorry. My time is ticking, so I will make it quick. I just wanted to say, though, that how long do you estimate that the closed session will take? Is there any way? I assume it's complex.
At least 45 minutes.
Oh, that's not unreasonable.
At least, when I say at least. I mean
And,
exactly.
okay, and I certainly understand how you have to alter your agenda sometimes to accommodate your guests to the next session, especially if they're on payrolls, as attorneys. So I do want to just say that I'll try to come back, but otherwise I'll contact individuals later. And thank you for your due diligence on public comment.
Please come back. We definitely want to hear from you.
Yes, nothing urgent, but I just do want to keep in touch with the executive director. Thank you.
See you soon. Okay.
I'm Charles, for the record, I'm Charles Marsteller, and I'm here representing myself.
Thank you. Moderator, any other public comments in queue?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are checking to see if there are callers in the queue. Please stand by. Madam Chair, there are no callers in the queue.
Okay, public comment is closed. Do I have a motion to proceed into closed session?
I move to proceed to closed session.
Second. Roll call, please.
A motion has been made and seconded to proceed into closed session. I will now call roll. Commissioner Bush?
Aye.
Commissioner Flores-Fang?
Aye.
Commissioner Finliff?
I vote aye, but I just want to note, again, as I have in the past, I don't think it's fair to move closed sessions into the middle of the agenda. It's not fair to the public. If DHR has other obligations or whoever we're meeting with, they need to make themselves available. I think this is the third time we've done this, and I think it's inappropriate. But aye.
Chair Lee?
Aye.
Commissioner Romano?
Aye.
I just have a question for the city attorney. Is it appropriate for me to explain why we have to move up the closed session?
You can make that explanation if you'd like, Commissioner.
Okay. My understanding is we need to have a representative from DHR in order to have a closed session. And my understanding is because of Director Eisen's tight schedule, she would have to have a hard stop by noon, which means if we do not move this item up to now, we would not have a DHR representative. Therefore, we would not be able to have a closed session. As you recall, we did have a closed session scheduled for last meeting, and I have decided to move this to this meeting so that all 5 of us will be able to participate along with the assistant city attorney. That is why we have to make this difficult decision to move up this agenda item. We do have a quorum, so therefore we now have a closed session. Okay. No one did. Okay. Are we ready to go?
Oh, yes. So with 5 votes in the affirmative and 0 votes opposed, the motion is approved unanimously.
Okay, thank you. For your patience and continued engagement. I now call agenda item number 8, which is discussion and possible action regarding request for waiver of post-employment restrictions for Mr. Phillip Wong. And I want to ask Mr. Kenning to introduce the item.
Commissioner Lee, I believe did they vote? Did they do the rest of the closed session?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot.
finish
We
the
have
closed
to.
session items
Yes.
first.
My apologies. We are now back in open session. Do I entertain a motion not to disclose the closed session? Commissioner
Commissioner
Bush?
Sinlev, I move not to disclose the session, but I may have inadvertently cut off Commissioner Bush. I apologize.
Okay, no problem. Okay, motion is made and seconded. Roll call, please.
On the motion to not to disclose closed session deliberations, I will now call the roll. Commissioner Bush?
My question is, what is the advantage to the commission of not disclosing this?
Why would we not disclose? That's what he asked.
I think
Yes.
per the city attorney, my understanding is the closed session discussions were labor-related, therefore,
It's within the purview of the commission to determine whether to disclose or not disclose the discussions in closed session. I think the basis for this particular type of closed session is to have a frank discussion with the labor negotiators, and it could put the commission at a disadvantage in future bargaining with respect to the measure if you
Thank
disclose
you.
the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Okay.
And can I just, one point on that? I think Commissioner Bush, if you have reservations about this in the future, you should oppose going into the closed session, and we should talk about it at that stage, because there may be worthy concerns to bring up, but I don't think we should just disclose it after the fact.
I don't
Well,
necessarily.
I think it depends.
Go ahead.
It depends on what comes up in the discussion.
I
whether
agree.
it gets disclosed after the fact. It seems to me that one of the things that was disclosed in our private conversation was a timeline of when it would be possible to take up the issue.
I don't think that we can discuss, I don't think we should discuss anything that happened until we move on it, Commissioner Bush, please.
The motion
It seems that we are legally allowed, is that correct, Deputy City Attorney, to disclose things that happen. We might think that that is unwise because it might interfere with the way that people communicate with us and our future negotiations. So for that reason, I think that we would vote to maintain confidential what was in the closed session, although we are legally allowed to disclose it. Is that correct, statement of law?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. So I think that there's a motion and a second to keep confidential what was said in closed session.
Okay. On the
So let's
motion
proceed with the vote.
Thank you, Chair Lee. On the motion to not disclose closed session deliberations, I will now call the roll. Commissioner Bush?
I vote no.
Commissioner Flores-Fang?
Aye.
Commissioner Finliv?
Aye.
Chair Lee?
Aye.
Commissioner Romano?
Aye.
With four votes in the affirmative and 1 vote opposed, the motion is carried by 4-1 with Commissioner Bush in the dissent.
Okay, thank you. Now we are going to agenda item number 8, discussion and possible action regarding request for waiver of post-employment restrictions for Mr. Phillip Wong. I call on Mr. Michael Kenning to introduce the item and give us a presentation.
Yes, thank you, Chair Lee. Commissioners, I can briefly introduce this issue and summarize the matter before the Commission. Phillip Wong is currently a project manager with the City's Office of Economic and Workforce Development. In his current role, he's responsible for implementing the City's development agreements, including the Potrero Hope SF project, which is a development agreement between the City, the Housing Authority, and Bridge Housing, which is a nonprofit developer. Mr. Wong would like to assume a new position with Bridge Housing, where he would be the director of the Potrero Hope SF project. To do this, Mr. Wong is seeking a waiver to both the permanent restriction on representation in particular matters and the one-year restriction communicating with his former department. Both of these rules are important to promoting fairness and maintaining the public trust in government decisions. They seek to accomplish this by preventing city officials from switching sides on matters that they have worked on with the city and preventing former city officials from attempting to influence their former departments for 1 year following their departure from the city. The regulations ask that the Commission only grant waivers if it makes a finding that granting such a waiver would not create the potential for undue influence or unfair advantage. As outlined in the staff memo, both Mr. Wong's current role and the desired position appear to be very similar. To quote directly from Mr. Wong's waiver request, "In my current role, I represent the city on the implementation of Potrero Hope SF. In my new role, I would represent Bridge Housing on the implementation of Potrero Hope SF." This similarity in the role points to exactly the sort of side switching that the rule is trying to address. While it is true that Potrero Hope SF is a joint project of the city and Bridge Housing, these are still two independent entities that have their own interests, and by switching sides, there could be the potential for Bridge Housing to have undue influence or unfair advantage over the city as Potrero Hope SF project continues to be implemented. I'd also like to note that this rule only prohibits the specific acts of representing Bridge Housing in the matter of Potrero Hope SF project, not employment. So if Bridge Housing wanted to hire Mr. Wong to work on a different project or serve in another capacity, the rule would not prohibit that employment change. Additionally, by communicating to his former OEWD colleagues, there's the potential that Mr. Wong could leverage his city experience and relationships in a way that could lead to undue influence or unfair advantage. I'd like to just close by stressing that staff's recommendation is not about the quality of Mr. Wong's work, which we hear is impeccable, his integrity as a civil servant, or the important work of the Potrero Hope SF project. Rather, it's that the rules are straightforward and intended to prevent city officials from switching sides and going back to influence their department within 1 year of leaving the city. Happy to take any questions on that. I also believe Mr. Wong is present in the room, as well as one of his supervisors, who are both prepared to make presentations. Thank you.
Why don't we hear from Mr. Wong before we open up for question? Mr. Wong?
Madam Chair, could I ask a quick question? Because I think it may affect timing and how we approach this.
Okay.
And it's a question for the chair and for, I guess, staff. I'm wondering whether there's an opportunity. So the staff did an excellent job laying out its recommendations. And Mr. Wong, of course, laid out his case. I wonder if there's a way where he could respond to the staff's recommendation in writing so that we could consider that more fully at a future meeting. And I'm throwing that out there because I think we would all benefit from hearing a detailed response to the staff's recommendation.
I can speak to the timing. The regulations required the commission to hear Mr. Wong's waiver request at the next meeting, since it was received within 2 weeks before the meeting. So that required the commission to take this item up. I don't believe there's a requirement that the commission necessarily act on this item today. However, that could be a question for Mr. Wong if that would, a month delay would jeopardize his employment opportunity there.
Okay. We would ask that later. Okay, Mr. Wong, can you please proceed? And
Hi, good
welcome.
afternoon, commissioners. I understand that there is a very busy agenda, and I really am grateful for the time that you're taking to carefully consider my request. Again, addressing Chair Lee, Vice Chair Bush, Commissioner Romano, Commissioner Forrest Fang, and Commissioner Finlev. I want to break my remarks into 3 parts, if I may. 1 is an offer of gratitude. 2 is an answer to the question of who is Phillip Wong, who am I, which may not be evident in my formal written response or request. And then the 3rd is the substantive merits of my waiver. First is an offer of gratitude to Commission staff. Director Pelham, for your steadfast leadership in this very, very difficult work. Michael Canning, Senior Policy Analyst, who was very generous, very responsive, in spite of my incredible number of email requests and questions to the commission staff that make this meeting happen with full public transparency, to the commissioners for your careful consideration of my waiver request for a permanent ban and 1-year communication ban so I can pursue a director position at a nonprofit affordable housing organization, Bridge Housing. And I reserve my deepest gratitude for my supporters. I received some no's when this opportunity came my way. I didn't seek it out. And they said, Phillip, say yes to this. It is difficult, it is hard, but it is worthwhile to do. And there's the individuals who will continue to do this work to transform the economic, community, and personal prospects for our most disenfranchised, our most vulnerable, but our most valuable and valiant communities that have been denied access for decades, who are going to continue to do that with or without me. And it is deeply honoring and humbling to be able to have served in this role supporting Petroria Hope SF and the Hope SF initiative over the past 6 years, and the opportunity to grow as an individual into a leadership role where I could continue to support the project. And while I won't be the sole individual who is going to change the prospects for this major Hope SF initiative, which is so direly important, I certainly look forward to the opportunity to continue to do that. Pending approval of these waiver requests. So on to the question of who am I? Who is Phillip Wong? I'm Phillip Christopher Wong. I'm the son of 2 immigrant parents who arrived on these shores as young teens, and my mom, Deli Wong, and my father, Peter Wong, who met and they fell in love, and they worked really, really darn hard to make sure that myself and my sister Daisy had every opportunity to be successful in this life. But not just successful, to be compassionate and caring, and to emphasize that the human being is what makes the world and our society valuable and special. And obviously I've been introspective over the past few months as this opportunity came my way, and I imagined a scenario where my mother would sit me down as I was trying to understand. I was just understanding object permanence, the power of communication and language, compassion and empathy. And if she were to sit me down and tell me, Phillip, one day you're going to grow up and you're going to be a good person, and you're going to find security in an everlasting love with your partner Robert, and you're going to work on the most amazing projects for the city of San Francisco, the most important projects, with a group of very hardworking people who really care, I would be completely stupefied by that thought. I find it unimaginable at times, even now, to have the privilege to present in front of this commission, to have that validation that the effort and investment that my parents put into me is resulting in my ability to try to defend this promotion, you could say. And that's, I think, the power of parents, that they can render the unimaginable for their kids so that they can also be equipped to make those unimaginable thoughts a reality. And it's, my mother's birthday is tomorrow. I think if she was still here on this earth, she would be really proud of me and the work that this commission does and all the people that are supporting these affordable housing projects, because they need as many experts and expertise as possible and people who care. And certainly, the outcome of the discussions here today and the commission's actions, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. And the work is still going to happen. Petroria was still going to happen. But I am desperately seeking, the permission to continue on and move into this leadership role as someone who started in the city as an intern and wanting to achieve more. And if I may if you'll allow me to enter into the record, for my mother's sake, 3 lessons that she taught me growing up. The first lesson being that in life there is a lot of bitterness that you'll encounter, but she said, Phillip, you need to accept that bitterness. You need to savor it because that will enhance the sweetness in life that accompanies the bitterness. There's room in your heart for all of those emotions and all those feelings, and you need to just dive in. The second lesson was that I needed to save face. I needed to make sure that not only through daily use of sunscreen, but also, if I get the opportunity at the end of my life to be reflective about my life, that I would be able to say that I had my integrity intact, And I allowed others to keep their dignity and their integrity intact as well. And then the last lesson of the many lessons that she taught me were that the choice to support your community, to support your family, to take care of people, there's only one answer, and that's yes. The choice is yes. And I'm a primary caregiver for my grandmother, Purayi. She and my mother, Deli, were civil servants. They were porters at Laguna Honda Hospital. And I mean, I would spend more time talking about them because they are who I am as a person. And they showed me the dignity that comes from public service, no matter where you are, whatever station in life you are, and that there's always opportunity to advance. And, you know, I desperately love them and care for them. And their story, and I think mine, and are important. But you know, I think of Portrayal Hope SF as, you know, it's evocative for me of our late president John Fitzgerald Kennedy's urging of the nation to support the mission to the moon. Now, Portrayal Hope SF is no mission to the moon, but again, it evokes the resonant words that President Kennedy said. We're choosing to go to the moon because it's not an easy thing to do, but it is a hard thing to do. But we must do it because it's going to show us the whole of the human condition, the whole of human ingenuity to succeed, to help each other out, and to achieve things that we think are unimaginable. And then I'll transition now into the substantive merits of my waiver request. So I appreciate Michael's time and effort in assembling it. It's certainly true that I'm currently a project manager. I've had the great opportunity to work with OEWD over 10 years and move through several different positions that has led into this recent 6-year period of time where I was a project manager working on some pretty amazing projects with really amazing people. And I would be on the same particular matter. I think it is important to not characterize Portrayal Hope SF as this multi-decade square footage, in terms of just gross square footage, the geographic area, similar to Chinatown, as a simple matter. It is a very complex project with a lot of different elements, a lot of different stakeholders. But I think what is key to note that there's just unanimous support for the development of Portrayal Hope SF. So I would be going to Bridge to represent the implementation of Portrayal Hope SF to boards, commissions, courts, and city agencies. But it is exactly those boards, commissions, and courts and city agencies that are the champions for Portrayal Hope SF. It is contractually and in terms of policy and in practice very much the case that the Hope SF projects via the Hope SF initiative are to receive every amount of help and effort, advantage, and influence. It's not unfair and it's not undue because we had visionary leaders like in 2007 under then Mayor Newsom to do things differently, to invest in our most disenfranchised, but again, our most valuable communities and change their prospects. And not only are there guardrails in place, the fact that Bridge Housing is legally defined as a nonprofit organization, they are also heavily regulated by state, federal, local agencies. They are not allowed to profiteer. There is no possibility of that ever happening. And additionally, there are guardrails within the development agreement and the major approvals themselves, which were fully discretionary through the Board of Supervisors and the mayor. And they were thousands of hours and years, decades of development to make these plans. And to suggest that amending them or changing them could happen with me moving into this position, I think is a misunderstanding of the effort that has gone in to make this plan and the promise to these communities for this project to be realized. So thank you very much for allowing me to say my story, to give you an illustration of who I am as a person, to allow me to honor the people that have made me the person that I am today. And I, again, grateful for your careful consideration. I am available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions, colleagues, before I ask my questions? Okay, Okay, if not, I just have a couple of questions. Mr. Wong, you are very impressive human being. The city is very, very lucky to have you as a representative of the city government. We hear we have to look at what's in front of us, which is the government conduct code. So my first question to you is, when you were employed by the city, starting as an intern, was there any time when your office shared with you this whole post-employment waiver process should you decide to move on from this city? Were you aware of this requirement at some
Chairly,
point?
oh, yes, I was not aware. In fact, if I may offer that, it has always been my observation that city teams are looking for folks outside of the city who have honed their talents and skills to bring them into the city. And in fact, the first words that I remember, not only the number of acronyms that were thrown my way when I started with the city as an intern, but the idea that we needed to have capacity building efforts with our community benefit organizations, because there is an idea that bureaucracy exists and it's Byzantine and it's difficult to get through. But in fact, bureaucracy exists not just for bureaucracy's sake, it's for the public trust, which is fragile and valuable and easily lost. So I understood that process, and there was always this anecdotally shared with me that external parties don't understand the city process, and we need them to understand it better. We need them to understand the charge before commissions like the one I'm standing and presenting before, but for other bodies that exist and the process that exists. So to really answer again your question, no, I was not aware of the post-employment restrictions when I first started with the city.
So when you were offered, or when you applied for your the job with Bridge, that's when you became aware that you have to meet, there was this waiver?
Truthfully, I've seen in my 10 years with the city, many colleagues leave and go on to external organizations, not just within the city. And most of them receive city attorney advice. So again, I made the mistake of not also thanking the advising city attorneys, Brad Rusty and Anna Flores, who advised me on sort of the next steps. But I did talk with former colleagues who left the city, and they said, you should talk with city attorney first, get their advice before you make any move at all, because the suggestion of any kind of undue influence or unfair advantage is one that you want to avoid, which is exactly why I've been asked to summon the courage and bravery to present today and to seek this out.
So have you gotten your solid offer from Bridge?
I have received an offer.
Okay. And what is the timeline?
Excuse me?
When do you need to let them know that you would accept the job?
Bridge is aware that that any employment with them is contingent upon this waiver, both the permanent ban and the one-year communications restriction. So that they're willing to wait because they have, in all humility, seen me as someone who's valuable, and folks have told them, including the key Hope SF stakeholders, that I would be good for the job, that I'm the best candidate for the job. So they're willing to wait.
Okay.
Yes.
Just a quick follow-up to
Yeah,
that, just
go
based
ahead.
on what you said. Sorry. So they have looked at other candidates. Are they continuing to review other applications, or are they putting everything on hold for this?
My understanding is that some resumes have come across their desks because this is a very rare opportunity. As statistically, leadership positions are just very hard to get, especially and unfortunately for ethnic minorities. But to answer your question, yes, they have reviewed other resumes.
Yeah, I have a couple questions, starting with
Yes.
for the city attorney, and then I'll get to you, because I want to understand exactly what we're deciding here. So is the question for the permanent ban and the one-year communication ban, is the legal threshold the same question for us?
Yes.
Okay, and is the question, is there a potential for undue influence, or is the question, is the position being used for personal gain?
The regulation provides that if the commission were to grant a waiver, either the one-year ban or the permanent ban, that you must make a finding that the waiver would not create potential for undue influence or unfair advantage.
All right. So I'm going to be pretty candid with you. You read the recommendation.
I did.
And it's not in your favor.
Yes,
All
correct.
right. The law says that if we should deny it if there's a potential for undue advantage, undue influence.
Right.
And that's because, and the suggestion is that because you work in the city, and this is a city that has a lot of interface with the city, that you would have an unfair, undue influence because of your past employment of the city. So beyond just the merits of your personal persuasion and the merits of whatever you happen to be arguing, but because you have personal relationships with people in the city. That's what you're up against. Tell me why there's not even a potential.
Right.
Right, potential. That's really a hard word for you. Sorry to say.
No, I understand.
Because it seems like you're great, and I want to echo what the chair said.
Thank you.
Truly, in your presentation was very impressive, and it's clear that you're doing great things for the city. And if it was, are you doing this job for personal gain? That would be easy for me. It seems to be clear you are not. Right? You're in this for all the right reasons. Unfortunately, the law says, is there potential for undue influence based on your prior or current employment with the city? Convince me that there's no potential for unfair influence.
Could we define undue influence? Does that mean that?
I don't know, city attorney, what is
I think in this particular context, understanding the regulations that the commissioners have given this process discretion to decide whether undue influence and unfair advantage in my particular case is a risk, even if there is a potential for that, and maybe even defining the potential for undue influence in the context of Potrero Hope SF, and maybe more narrowly focusing on that project because...
Unfortunately, we're not super familiar with that, so maybe you're going to have to explain that to us. City Attorney, can you illuminate what that means? And is there any further definition of what undue influence means?
Commissioner, unfortunately, the regulations don't define those terms, so it would be
Here's
up
what
to your discretion.
Here's what I would say, is that you would have influence based on your personal relationship as an employee of the city of San Francisco beyond the merits of whatever happens to be doing with your future employer.
Right.
Why is there no potential unfair influence there?
Yes, I think I have come to understand the knowledge and experience that I've gained as expertise to move a project that has been delayed. I know this is a revolving door policy and regulation, and in fact, I think it is the case that at Bridge Housing, they've had several executive directors who are overseeing the project who've left, and I think my record has shown that when I stick with an organization, I really stick with it, and I don't seek opportunities. I have the great fortune that they come my way, certainly, but I think the ability to apply that to a project that the city has heralded as its highest priority, that is to receive every amount of expertise and advantage, so that it can be built faster, is not undue. I think there is absolutely going to be influence in my position. That is why I've been my name was thrown out there. But it's not undue. It is undue to delay the project. It is undue to have communities who are distressed and again valuable and resilient to continue to wait until someone is selected to carry on the job without any knowledge if they're going to be able to perform or have longevity. And again, even I can say that I can't guarantee that for myself, right?
Sure.
Life happens. We've gone through a global pandemic, and also I think we're just going through a lot right now. So I can't make those guarantees. But in this moment in time, I can say, yes, I can do that.
And I think you're wise to focus on the word undue, right? You're going to have influence. That's your
correct
current or your future job.
Yes.
But there's no potential for illegal influence, like you're not trying to, and there's no potential for corrupt influence.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. I think that the testimony, which is deeply humbling, that will follow during public comment, it will show that I'm an open book, very transparent in my interactions. My work absolutely is subject to the Sunshine Ordinance. I mean, there's practicality to that and how information is delivered, but absolutely everything that I do is available, and I wouldn't shy away from sharing it.
All right, thank you very much.
And if I may also add that that the community has expressed the need for that. I think that we don't want to put them in a position where we're only telling them information as on a need-to-know basis. I think that their active involvement and centering their voices has always been a priority for all of the stakeholders involved who are in a position to make decisions and determine the prospects of the project. So that level of trust for me is incredibly important, not only for my colleagues, but for anyone I meet.
Do you think there's any chance, I'm sorry, going back to this.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any chance that the city would be influenced to accept a proposal that you would make with your future employer because of your relationship, where a better proposal from somebody else, but they would say, we know this guy, he's our pal, so we're going to go.
Yeah, I'll have to diminish myself in that way then. Again, I'm not the individual that is going to change the future of Petro SF. That ship has sailed. It is going to happen. We want it to happen faster, but it will happen because that is the promise that has been made and it needs to be kept. And I also don't think, given that the development agreement, the major approvals that are subject to years of public process, community meetings, presenting before boards, commissions, and in some cases courts as well, are going to be changed by some brilliant idea that I have. And in fact, I think that the city would appreciate, whether I'm at Bridge or another stakeholder external to the city, providing an idea that makes the housing happen faster, because and saves money, because unfortunately, as we're all aware, construction costs for affordable housing are astronomical. That a single door of affordable housing is the same as a market rate unit that is also stupefying. So any money that is saved goes directly back into the project. That is a key tenet of the Hope SF model in terms of the real estate development.
Okay. Any other comments from Commissioner Finlove?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with everything Commissioner Romano is saying. He's asking all the right questions. And I think one thing that I'm struggling with is that this is the exact kind of situation that screams for these kinds of prohibitions. And if ethics staff had not made this recommendation, I'd probably say they weren't doing their job, because on paper, it looks like exactly the kind of thing that Mr. Wong should be barred from. But that said, I'm having a hard time looking at the materials, understanding exactly what interactions we're talking about, which is why I was hoping that Mr. Wong would, timing-wise, think it makes sense to give him time to respond to the detailed recommendation that staff laid out to explain why his specific interactions with the city do not raise that possibility for undue influence. And I think Commissioner Romano is making the right points, where the question is not whether you're corrupt. No one thinks you are. The question is whether, if two equal proposals come in, are your former colleagues going to take yours? So I think understanding exactly what the issues you may be communicating with the city are will help kind of inform whether there's that potential. So I'm curious whether that timing would work for you to give me more kind of comfort that your specific conduct would not, in fact, create that potential for undue influence or unfair advantage.
Correct. Thank you, Commissioner Finlove, for clarifying the question and concern. As is stated in the development agreement, all actions following its approval are administrative and ministerial, and the interactions that I would have would be in meetings that are with city agencies and departments that have written records. We don't have sort of side conversations that don't end up on a written piece of paper in an email or in community meeting minutes. Those interactions are, again, accessible and available. I mean, obviously with some practical considerations to be made of how long it takes to type up an email and submit it. Obviously, there can be, there's a human element to it too, right? There's some omission. When I started out as a note taker in meetings, and I might have missed a bullet point, an action item every now and then. But I think the whole of any major proposal to change the course of Potrero HEPA-SF could never be borne by a sole individual. My interactions could never, there's no single interaction that I could have with any of the relationships that I developed, and actually I want to speak to the integrity and stature of the relationships that I built and the hardworking city employees and stakeholders involved that would allow a single interaction to change the entire course of a multi-decade public housing transformation project.
Yeah, no, thank you
Yes,
for that.
yeah.
And we're in early December, so I was hoping you'd say, given the holidays,
yeah,
nothing's going to happen in the next month anyways, and that you'd happily come back or submit
Oh.
writing and then have us focus on this a month from now. I haven't heard you say that, so I'll give you another kind of opportunity
Yeah,
to
yes.
talk about the timing.
I'm happy to provide more information, absolutely. Apologies for not answering that more directly.
And it's really because everything you're saying makes sense, but I think I really need to be able to consider the specific interactions we're talking about. And I'm curious what my fellow commissioners feel about that kind of thought.
Yeah, if I may, I would ask that you address two separate questions.
Yes.
First is, and Commissioner Finleff put it better than I did. I understand what you're saying, that no major decision can be made. It's not going to boil down to you. This is a decades-long process. However, you're not a machine. They aren't hiring a computer. They're hiring you for your discretion and what we're concerned about is that they just go with it because, oh, Phillip said it's the right thing to do, right? Because we know Phillip.
Mm-hmm.
And so to address that and how those decisions, because even if they're small ones, that's not the way the city should be making its decisions. I think you'd agree with that.
Yeah.
And then the second question is a kind of a legal question. I don't know if you want to hire an attorney or if that's, but what does undue influence mean? And I would ask that the city attorney also brief us on what undue influence means in this context, because I'd like further clarification on that by our January meeting. Presuming that the employment contract would not be put in jeopardy by pushing this decision off till mid-January?
No.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Bush, do you have any questions?
I do have some questions based on the fact that I served earlier on the General Obligations Bond Oversight Committee that included funding for public housing in Potrero. And I know that one of the issues that comes up calls for a forceful response from the city. We have found that PG&E, for example, has been very slow to hook up new developments. And so a development may be completed and ready for occupancy, but it'll be 8 or 9 months down the road before anyone moves in because none of the appliances can be hooked up. That situation calls for a more assertive leadership to bring that to the attention of the public and to policymakers so that it can be addressed. Does this gentleman feel that he can do that?
Yes. And I have historical records to show that I have participated in making sure that the Chapter 99 of the San Francisco Administrative Code requiring public power at public sites is enforced with our hardworking partners at the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission Power Enterprise, who must work with PG&E on wholesale distribution tariff applications in order to establish public power. And it is at minimum a 2-year process, and it is a challenging one. But I think you're correct, Vice Chair Bush, in noting that PG&E as an external party, and especially the folks that work on it day to day, they need help in conceiving of the mission aspect of building out affordable housing and supporting the Petro Hope SF project, and they have committed to that, and that extends to all areas of leadership within those organizations who have to center providing power so that basic services are available within units for people to have habitable units.
Any other?
Thank,
Are you done, Commissioner Bush?
yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to public comment, I just wanted to share a couple of my observations. I started my career in senior housing, affordable housing, so this is truly a passionate call for me. So I salute you for your passion and your commitment. In addition to what my colleagues have shared with you, I think what's before us this is the third waiver request that I have heard on this commission. Most of us have heard from this commission, but this one I have to say is very, very difficult because on a human scale, anyone would love to have you continue your work. But on this commission, we are charged to look at the specific government conduct codes. We have to adhere to that. And more importantly, to build public trust in government operations. And the federal government has a very clean, simple code, which is within 1 year of our departure from federal employment for the executives, we cannot have any contact with our former, not only our employer agencies, but the former contacts. So it was very clear, but it was made clear to us when we take on the position that within a year, whatever you want to do, you cannot get back to your contacts. So so that's number one. The second thing is the public trust is so important. No matter how wonderful your work is, people are going to look at someone jumping from one group to another and what kind of undue influence. They're not going to look at the specific wording. They're going to look at, hey, Phillip Wong knew how the system works. He knew all the players. So for his new employer, no matter how laudable the nonprofit community service organization is, are they going to have any advantage over other competitors? So I'm struggling with that. I just wanted to share with you. Mm-hmm. And I am glad that we can continue this for another month. That would not jeopardize your potential professional future. But this is something that I think we need to really look at, because it's not whether your specific job is going to be causing any advantage in that particular case, right. But I am more interested in how would that set as a precedent to other cases. It may not be fair, but appearance is everything, and trust is everything. How can we make sure that whatever decision we make, the public still has confidence that government employees do not take what they gain from their government employment mm-hmm. to give advantage to other players. So that's, for me, is a very important consideration in this particular case. So if if we can open up for public comment on this
Shirley?
matter.
Prematurely, before going to public comment, the regulations do allow for a representative from Mr. Wong's department to make a presentation as well in support or opposition of the waiver. And I believe Judson True has prepared a presentation, if the commission would like.
Is he present, Mr. Chu? Okay, Mr. Chu, welcome.
Thank you very much for the time and the questions and for
Thank
the
you,
care.
Mr. Wong.
Thank you.
We'll see you in January.
Thank you, Mr. Canning, for pointing that out. Good afternoon, Chair Lee, Vice Chair Bush, and Commissioners Finliv, Flores-Fang, and Romano, and of course, Executive Director Pelham. My name is Judson True, and I am Mayor London Breed's Director of Housing Delivery. In that role, I've worked closely with Phillip Wong for almost 4 years, and I am here today in strong support of his waiver request his request to waive post-employment restrictions so that he can perform all the activities needed to take a new position as director of the Potrero Hope SF project for Bridge Housing, a nonprofit affordable housing developer. That's where I'm going to stop reading what I've written and respond to, the discussion so far, and both from the commissioners and from Mr. Wong. So I've worked for the city and the state for 19 years, and I think after hearing from Phillip, it won't surprise you at all to tell you that he is an incredibly special individual. And I get emotional about thinking about not working with him as closely in the future, and just the 4 years we spent together working on the DA projects, the development agreement projects that he's been responsible for. I do not think that there is another individual I've worked with in my almost 20-year career that expresses, that embodies the character and the integrity that we want from our public servants. I think you all saw it and you responded to it, and I think that's incredibly important, and it's an honor to be here to speak on his behalf. One reason I want to emphasize that is because the regulations that the commission is considering as you look at these waiver requests provide a roadmap to grant these waivers, and I want to talk about that a little bit, and then I want to also answer any questions about how his current job relates to his future job, since I've worked with him closely on all the DA projects. And if this item does get continued, which Phillip sounded open to, then I want to make sure that on behalf of his employer, but the mayor, and working with OEWD, that I provide any information that the commission would want to be able to make a decision in January. I will say, obviously, the uncertainty is just a little bit of a challenge just as we advance the project, but we are headed into the holidays, and it's a big project with a lot of people working on it. And so Phillip, who's not working on it now, let me be very clear, when I was informed of it, he was not working on the project any longer. It's something I'd like to sort it out soon, and I very much hope that the waivers are granted. Deputy City Attorney Brad Russi mentioned this, but the commission can grant the waiver if the commission determines that granting a waiver would not create the potential for undue influence or unfair advantage. And obviously, Commissioner Romano spoke about that as well, and as did Commissioner Finliv. I think the key there is what that potential looks like and how it relates to the work that he does now and that he would do on the future, and especially on the future project. And I think this is where the nature of the Potrero Hope SF project is incredibly important. I think about the 4 years I've worked on all the development agreement projects, and it's very hard for me to imagine a situation where Phillip's work would not be aligned with where the city is trying to go, because we all want to see the projects proceed, to see them proceed efficiently, to have the infrastructure and the buildings function how they should. And it isn't really a situation where Phillip is presenting something and someone else is presenting something, and we have to decide between that. It's a situation where we're working collaboratively in as much of a teamwork fashion as you can with individuals who are not city employees to advance really what is absolutely one of the most important projects in the city. If we have written follow-up, I will include the definition and the description of Potrero Hope SF from the ordinance that the Board of Supervisors approved in 2017, approving the project. But it really isn't a case of switching sides or a potential for undue advantage because of the unique nature of the Hope SF projects, and in this case, the Potrero Hope SF projects, and just how aligned the city is with our nonprofit development partners. Chair Lee also made one point about that the staff report also makes about sort of competition with other affordable housing developers and a potential there. And I think I believe they're in the written record, and depending on how long public comment goes and people's schedules today, two of the other nonprofit developers who work on other Hope SF projects, Hunter's View, John Stewart Company, and Sunnydale Mercy Housing, have also put in strong letters of support for Phillip. And I think that speaks to the unique nature of the affordable housing community in San Francisco, where yes, different affordable housing developers may respond to the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development RFPs for projects, but once you have an approved development agreement project like these Hope SF projects, the competition is over. There is no competition. It's all about getting it implemented. So I wanted to sort of make that point in response to that issue. I do also want to note, I believe this is in the regulations, that when considering this waiver request, the commission may consider, and there's sort of a standard list of 4 or 5 bullet points about the nature of the communication, the subject matter, the position of the former position of the employee, and then the last one is any other factors the commission deems relevant. And I think that provides a lot of room for the commission to take in the totality of circumstances in this waiver request and make some findings that the potential for undue influence or unfair advantage does not exist. So I wanted to point out that, and I think that exists for a reason. That exists because a big part of how government is perceived is about rigidity. And I work a lot with the bureaucracies in San Francisco, with a lot of the great city departments that are ensuring that our buildings are built safely, that our streets and utilities are functioning as they should, and and we all know that sometimes they don't, and we work on that. And I think the public often reacts to a sort of a rigid approach from government, where we have these rules and you must stick to them no matter what, and we're not going to look at what your circumstance is. And I think this is exactly a case where you are provided by the regulations of the Ethics Commission interpreting the codes, that has all been publicly approved, with the discretion to find the circumstances to grant these waivers. And I would actually respond to one point that Chair Lee said. And I think in terms of how this would look, I think based on the input in the public comment and just the community around Potrero Hope SF, I think that it will look really good for the commission to recognize the unique nature of Phillip Wong himself, his commitment to the project, and the nature of the Potrero Hope SF project to find in favor of these waivers in order to further advance the project. So I wanted to respond to those issues. I do want to talk briefly about the position, because it is different. I think Phillip's letter certainly describes the commonalities and working to advance the project. But right now on the OEWD team, Phillip is really a coordinator, trying to make sure the project advances, and he's working with all the different departments who have the explicit authority to grant permits, to approve building permits, to issue street improvement permits to build new streets and utilities and those kinds of things. He's not involved in the sort of financing of the project through MOCD or some of those more transactional aspects of the project, and he never has been. He was not working on the project when the development agreement was approved. So there is I think a difference in what his job is now, and then the more expansive job he would have directing the project as a whole. And I think that's what, he didn't quite say this, but in my own conversations with him, he's going from a senior project manager position with the city, but he's going to direct a key initiative of the city overall. And that's different. I know that as someone who's, grown in my career and changed. There's a difference in the positions, and I think one of the factors that the commission could deem relevant is both the nature of the change in position and how important it is to Phillip to take on a role like that, and what that means for him in his career and his life. And the commission has, considered those kind of personal issues in past in the small number of past waivers that the commission has granted. I think the last thing I want to say before answering any questions that the commissioners might have is, I do have one suggestion to address a concern raised in the staff report, and I want to thank, as Phillip did, Michael Canning for his work with Phillip on this, and when I reached out to him yesterday, he was very responsive, and I wanted to give him a quick heads up that I was going to make this suggestion, and I have talked to Phillip about it. Given that both Phillip's waiver request and much of the input that you're going to receive today is focused on the Potrero Hope SF project, perhaps a compromise approach could be to keep the one-year communication ban in place for Phillip on all bridge projects other than Hope SF, Potrero Hope SF. I don't believe that maintaining that ban is absolutely necessary, given the role he's supposed to have working on Potrero SF and Bridges nonprofit status and its collaborative relationship with the city. But but such an approach could be a compromise and address one of the issues that the staff report raised. So, and I think that also helps Chair Lee's point about the perception and making sure that it's not a blank check, that Phillip could say, go work with Bridges, collaboration with a for-profit developer on a project, and then use his relationships with the city to go back and negotiate those in the next year. So that's an idea that I wanted to put on the table for the commission. And I really do thank you for your time and your service. I've worked with a lot of commissioners in my career, and it's a lot of hard work, a lot of time, and a lot of effort, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chu. It seems like we may be moving toward a 1-month delay on this decision, and I just want to add that my request to Mr. Wong, if you can provide for us the job description for the bridge position, as well as prohibitions that they may have in that position for us to consider for the next meeting. But since we have folks who've made the time to attend this meeting, let's open up for public comments.
I have a question, if I may.
Oh, please.
Am I correct that the undue influence that we're concerned about is undue influence over you and your team?
I think that
you're the city decision maker.
I think I'm certainly working for the mayor. I try to make sure that decisions get made. Yes. So I'm certainly part of the team working on to advance these projects.
All right. So what we're concerned about with undue influence is that you would be making a decision because Mr. Wong suggested it, not because they're in the best interest of San Francisco, right? That's the conflict of interest that we're worried about. So can you describe, or can you, assuming that we grant the waiver and Mr. Wong gets the job, can you imagine a future decision where you'd have to disagree with him?
I'm thinking about the interactions with the current Hope SF developer, yeah. And I think that for the most part, I can't think of an obvious disagreement. For the most part, it's about working through design issues, with city departments on, the streets and utilities and sort of jurisdictional questions. For the most part, we're working closely with, the development team to make sure that, that their designers are responding to the comments of the city. I can't immediately think of
what I'm looking for is assurance.
Yeah.
That you're going to, and you and your team are going to be acting in the absolute best interest of San Francisco, regardless of how close you feel or how much integrity you feel, Mr. Wong.
Through Chair Lee to Commissioner Romano, absolutely. I think both, me and my career and the others that work on these projects take the responsibility of ensuring that all the work done on these projects is in the best interest of the city and the residents of San Francisco and these project areas, incredibly seriously. There are also many checks and balances. All as Phillip has said, everything is subject to disclosure. That's between us and the development partners, and there are dozens, if not hundreds, of staff and departments who are never shy about their opinions. If the developer if their consultant is proposing a design that the developer doesn't like for, a curb or a curb cut or a street frontage or something like that, then, there's always, it's never adversarial. It's not adversarial typically, and I don't see a potential for undue influence or unfair advantage from Phillip's role, given all the safeguards in our team.
And I don't mean to suggest that his opinions would be unaligned with the city's, but we just need to make sure that the city is always protected.
Yeah, and I think that the nature of the development agreement and the contract and all of the approvals that embody that, I think, help protect against that potential.
Thank you.
And I would just like to add that I think the law states, or at least in the memo, Mr. Canning mentioned that if anything were to change, Mr. Wong would have to reapply for a waiver. So that's also an assurance that we have, that if anything were to change from the situation that we have now, right, wouldn't he have to reapply for a waiver?
Those reference to the if the facts that they provided change.
Okay.
Yeah, not really sure how that would. I mean,
okay. Well,
yeah,
I mean,
if something that was stated
in
the facts turned out to be incorrect or
understood. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's open up for public comment, please. We have. Do we have anyone in the room who wish to testify?
Hi. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of Phillip. My name is Maggie Matson, and I have worked with Phillip on the housing delivery team at the Office of Economic and Workforce Development for over 3 years. And I had a lot kind of on his character, so I will kind of not speak to that quite as much, although I will definitely mention it. But to address some of the points that came up during Phillip's remarks. Over the 3 years that I've known Phillip, every professional action that I've seen him take has been in furtherance of the missions of the City and County of San Francisco, OEWD, and housing delivery. And I really feel that in this new role, although Judson, as Judson pointed out, it would be a different role, Phillip would still be serving the same side, serving that same mission rather than switching sides. And I think Judson pointed out a lot of interesting points about the nature of the Hope SF projects and kind of why it is that conflict of interest is not so present. I think that the relationships that Phillip has built over the years with city staff and the knowledge that he's gained, rather than being an undue influence, would really only serve to produce housing, affordable housing for people in San Francisco who need it. Speaking as Phillip's colleague, in terms of him having an undue influence on relationships, I know that personally, knowing him and his values, I think I would proceed to try to be as objective as possible. I would already do that, of course, as a city employee, but if I were trying to emulate Phillip, I would make sure that I'm being as above the board about it as possible and know that he is comfortable, that he would be comfortable if the situation ended up that he didn't get a bid or whatever the scenario would be, because he is such an honest person. His values are so obvious to anybody who knows him. His integrity is just incredible, and I will wrap it up, but just if the rule is about switching sides, really, in practice, it's only going to serve to prevent a dedicated civil servant from continuing his goal to produce housing for the people who need it in the city that he grew up in and that he loves. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Madsen. Since we have at least a couple more speakers here in the meeting room, moderator, can you please check and see if there's any speakers waiting in the queue to comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are checking to see if there are callers in the queue who wish to comment on item number 8. Please stand by.
While we're waiting, for those of you who are remaining to talk, I can only speak for myself. I have absolutely no reservations whatsoever about Mr. Wong's integrity or his character. I think that that's shared in the room. We want to make sure that it's actually your character, the rest of the folks who work in the city, that he can't influence you. We're protecting the city, we're not protecting Mr. Wong, so I'd love to hear about that.
Madam Chair, we have 2 callers in the queue.
Okay.
Please stand by.
Let's alternate. After this one, we will go back to the room's speakers.
Okay. Welcome, caller. Your 3 minutes begins now.
Hi, this is Catherine Etzel. I am a director of development at the John Stewart Company. We are one of the other Hope SF developers that you heard Judson mention just before. I want to speak in strong support of Phillip Wong's request for a waiver. The model of Hope SF is really a microcosm of the collaborative spirit that we in the development community here in San Francisco as far as the nonprofit affordable housing developers and Hope SF developers carry. It's a partnership among many stakeholders, groups who are really not in competition or seeking any personal advantage, but we're working in support of creating affordable housing for really 4 of the most vulnerable communities in San Francisco. I'm sure most folks here know about Hope SF, and there's probably a lot of material that has been presented, and Judson mentioned he was going to provide more. But these 4 public housing sites really represent 4 sites that have been identified as the most distressed and in need of transformational development. And frankly, they've waited years for this to happen. I've worked personally on Hope SF for about 10 years and for about 3 personally with Phillip Wong. And I have witnessed firsthand, and many folks have mentioned this, and I know will, his incredible project management skills, his high personal integrity, and his really high knowledge of the technical expertise that is required to navigate these really challenging and complex projects. Yes. Phillip has demonstrated a very uniquely and dedicated, compassionate side to the work we do. And given this city is in an extreme housing crisis, I feel very strongly that professionals like Phillip, who possess these complex skills, be elevated to levels where they can be in leadership capacities for nonprofit developers and help them more quickly navigate the challenges of getting both the infrastructure and the vertical components of these projects approved. While I'm going to personally miss working closely with Phillip in his role at OEWD, I know that he's going to be extremely successful working for Bridge Housing in his new role, and I strongly urge the granting of this waiver. We really just, quite honestly, can't afford to hold back talented leaders who are going to work tirelessly to bring affordable housing more quickly to this city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you. The next person in the room, next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you so much for inviting us to speak here. I'm Jason Liu. I'm the Policy Director for Community Development for the Hope SF Initiative. And I'm here in strong support of Phillip Wong's request for the granting of the waivers today and possibly in January as well. Just to provide a quick overview, Hope SF Potrero is part of a unique city-led public-private initiative that seeks to develop vibrant mixed-income communities at 4 of the most distressed public housing sites in the city, without the mass displacement of the original public housing residents. Hope SF represents a promise and a commitment by the city to these original residents to not only provide high-quality, affordable housing, which Phillip would, if given this opportunity, be leading the initiative on, but it's also to ensure that we center resident voice, that we ensure that we're creating healthy communities, and that we're providing enhancements to community wealth as well. And it is our expectation for this role that he sort of include all that within his purview as well. So it's quite a bit expansive beyond his current role here, in that we expect him to not only lead just the physical development of housing on the site, but like how can these physical housing developments actually link into some of these greater goals of enhancing community wealth. If at the end of the initiative, all we do is just build new housing, we would have failed as an initiative. How can we break those intergenerational bounds of poverty using housing as a platform here? And I cannot think of anyone better suited for this role than Phillip. Additionally, to some of the commissioners' concerns as well, as Hope SF as an initiative, we stand in a role of ensuring that we are centering resident voices, that we are centering resident concerns. These are communities that have been historically been disinvested in by the city. We owe a commitment and a promise to these communities to provide of safe, affordable housing of high quality and opportunities for economic advancement. It is in that role that we center ourselves in this collaboration between not only city agencies and our development partners, but also resident leaders, also community-based organizations, And it's through this network of stakeholders that we hold our development partners to task and to RACL accountability as well. And that is something that we will not and have not shied away from. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. Let's go back to moderator. Anyone on the
Please
queue?
stand by. Yes, we have one more caller in the queue. Please stand by. Welcome, caller. Your 3 minutes begins now.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. This is John Thomas with the Public Works Infrastructure Task Force, and I had intended to kind of echo some of the comments that I had written in support of Phillip, which are largely about his character, and you've heard about that from everyone. But I think one point that I just wanted to echo Judson's comments and regarding the checks and balances that are in place, and to respond to one of the questions from a commissioner about making sure that sort of the city employees that Phillip will interface with through the implementation of the Hope SF project are also held to the highest standards. And I think to that end, the checks and balances I think are very important. There really are no conditions or situations that come to mind where it is a single sort of point of interface with one person or another. There are multiple departments, multiple individuals within departments that are responsible for responding and reviewing the various kind of infrastructure-related improvements, similarly for the vertical implementation as well. And I think, that element of it and reviews by city attorneys, et cetera, I think prevent any kind of impropriety from coming to pass. And I think I would also echo something that Catherine mentioned a few moments ago, just really the fact that Phillip is and has become kind of expert in this field and is such a talented project manager, I think is exactly what we should be looking for. Knowing the system should not be the bar that would prevent him from then, helping facilitate and deliver these very important projects. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Another speaker?
Good afternoon, Chair Lee and Commissioners. My name is Ryan Van Zylen. I'm the project manager for Potrero Hope SF at the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development, and I'm here today to express my strong support for Phillip's request for waivers. Hope SF is arguably one of the highest priority affordable housing developments across the city, as we've mentioned before, and Phillip's work has been instrumental toward delivering the goals promised by this initiative. His years of experience with the city would not, in my opinion, constitute an unfair advantage, but recast him in a new role among the Hope SF stakeholders that do not compete nor seek personal advantage, but work together toward the common goal of creating affordable housing for some of San Francisco's most vulnerable communities. As I will work very closely with the future bridge director for Potrero and this project, I can assure you that there would be no undue influence, and requests and proposals from the affordable housing developer would be treated fairly and objectively, just as they have in the past and will continue to be. His high level of integrity supports this position and is yet another example of his ability to work objectively and fairly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Zylen. Moderator, do we have any more speakers in the
Madam
queue?
Chair, we have one more caller in the queue.
Okay.
Please stand by. Welcome, caller. Your 3 minutes begins now.
Good afternoon, Chair Lee and Commissioners. My name is Lydia Ely. I'm the Deputy Director for Housing for the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development. I'm here to speak in support of Phillip Wong's waiver request. I just want to remind everyone that, this is an implementation role that he will be holding if he moves to the bridge housing team. The development agreement and the master development agreement that govern Potrero Hope SF and the development of infrastructure and housing, parks, transportation improvements, et cetera, have all been inked and approved. These agreements were negotiated over many years by multiple city partners, the Planning Department, MOCD, MTA, OEWD, the Housing Authority, HUD, DPW. So, these took thousands of hours to develop. They're closely monitored by multiple entities, and they cannot be amended without the approval of all the signatories and the Board of Supervisors. So Philip's new role as Director of Potrero Hope SF will not afford him any special opportunities to reinterpret or redirect the implementation of these agreements. I would say, if anything, his experience on OEWD's implementation team has actually habituated him to implementing these plans and respecting the original intent as well as the letter of these agreements. On the MOCD side, we have a lot of belts and suspenders in place to make sure that the housing at Potrero Hope SF is developed within the MOCD framework. All of our loans are approved by the Board of Supervisors if they're over $10 million. All of our loans go through the Citywide Affordable Housing Loan Committee. We have underwriting guidelines that govern developer fee for infrastructure, for housing. So, there are really very limited opportunities for a nonprofit like Bridge to gain any additional benefits or any additional benefits under the Hope SF framework. So everyone has talked about Philip. He is really one of the best and brightest community development professionals among us. He brings excellent commitment and skill to his work. He will, in his new role, make sure that there is progress on Hope SF and that the development will proceed with integrity and commitment. So I'm hoping that you all will support Philip's request so that this project can proceed with rapid implementation and deliver on many, many promises to a long-neglected community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any speakers in the room?
Good afternoon, Chair Lee, Commissioners. I'm Hank Heckel, Compliance Officer in Mayor Breed's office. I want to commend the staff for the very thorough analysis of this issue and the commissioners for taking the time to parse through the very important issues raised by Mr. Wong's request. And I just wanted to raise a couple of points that I think the commission should keep in mind and also to respond to some of the points that have been raised. So the post-employment restrictions are obviously critical. They're designed to prevent former employees from leveraging their knowledge and experience to provide an unfair advantage to private interests that are adverse to the city. But of course, there is a provision for the waiver, and this is precisely the kind of situation in which a waiver is appropriate, and there is precedent for this. There are several cases in which the Commission has granted waivers in similar instances. There's the Tiffany Bohe case, the Thomas Long request, the McClellan matter. I would just like to put those into the record. In all of those cases, the city's interests were aligned with the entity, the nonprofit entity to which a former employee was moving. So there was no opportunity to leverage interests, to leverage experience and knowledge against the interests of the city. And this is a case where the city and the Bridge organization are operating hand in glove on a decades-long undertaking. The terms of that undertaking have been set forth already in the agreements. So that was something that Mr. Wong was not involved in. So the city and Bridge are sort of walking arm in arm to complete these projects. And so there's really no opportunity for undue influence or unfair advantage. In this case, I just quote some of the analysis in the matter involving Tiffany Bohe's request. She went from OEWD a number of years ago to helm the State Redevelopment Agency, which is a separate entity. The staff memorandum in that case noted that the one-year post-employment communications ban was enacted to protect the integrity of government decision-making by preventing a public employee from using her influence or knowledge gained as a public servant to advance private interests at the expense of the public. The memo went on to say that because the individual's work would advance the city's interests as much as the other entities. There was no reason to believe that her work would result in undue influence or unfair advantage. And so I would submit to you that this is that's precisely the case here as well.
Mr. Heckel, a quick response to that. I'd just like to point out that in the same case that you just mentioned, I believe there was an exception. There was a caveat to the 1-year limitation where communications could not extend beyond communication about the project. And so I'd just like to make that clear on the record that that's something that maybe we could consider moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moderator, is there any other speakers waiting in the queue from your end? If not, let's proceed with the in-person testimonies. Do we have any more?
Madam Chair, there are no further callers in the queue, but as a reminder to members of the public who are calling in to make public comment, as you made your public comment, if you hit *3 to raise your hand. If you've made your comment, if you would hit *3 again, it would lower your hand. And if you want to make public comment on any of the future items, then please do so by hitting *3 again to raise your hand. And Madam Chair, now that I said that, we do have a caller in the queue. Okay. Please stand by. Welcome, caller. Your 3 minutes begins now.
Hello, everyone. This is Rainey Dare. I'm with Mercy Housing, and I submitted a letter in the packet that you have. I wanted to echo the testimony that you've heard and basically say that I completely agree with the Ethics Commission's concern that we make sure that our city government engenders the public's trust. If we don't have the public's trust, we are not able to do the work that we're able to do because we are partnering with the city government agencies to execute the HOPE SF vision. My role has been for the last 14 years to basically direct the work at Sunnydale, which is very similar to the work that has been described for Potrero. And I would say Phillip's proposed new role would be equivalent to the role that I have now at Sunnydale on behalf of Mercy Housing. And to address the questions around whether there would be undue influence, I think that Lydia Ely's testimony that there has been a development agreement already negotiated that outlines very clear expectations and roles for the developer versus the city government partners in the execution of Sunnydale or Potrero HOPE SF. That is a public document. It is very detailed, and that is what we are all working towards to implement. And in the implementation, there's a lot of parties that are involved, and it's a very collaborative and transparent process. So, for example, to get a new street designed, engineered, permitted, and constructed, it takes multiple city agencies to collaborate with us, and there's a very wide communication protocol that happens for that kind of example. We meet with each other several times a week in meetings where there's multiple agencies represented. We also have a pretty clear kind of tracking system, email system, other trackers that are public documents, and that pertains to the street and utility infrastructure. It pertains to anything really that we're going to be building and developing as part of the HOPE SF endeavor. So I do think there's a lot of scrutiny, a lot of stakeholders, a lot of protections, if you will, to prevent the undue influence that might be of concern for this commission. That has been my experience for the last 14 years, and I completely appreciate your questions and available to provide additional information if that's helpful in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Dare. If there's no more public comments, let's close public comments.
Madam Chair, we have one more caller in the queue.
Okay.
Please stand by. Welcome, caller. Your 3 minutes begins now.
The commissioners, my name is Francisco da Costa. I want you all to hear very carefully what I say. These restrictions are put in place so that the citizens and the taxpayers can have full transparency and accountability. I have been monitoring disposition and development agreements for the last 45 years, some of them on Hunters Point. This is on Potrero Hill. Everything about this project is dubious. Now, the mayor's office may be present, listening to this conversation. The area where this project is going to be built has serpentinite rock, which when you crush, releases structures. Even as the construction is done without taking care of the requirements, the safeguards, we have people who are not experienced trying to push this project. Now, if this matter has come to you about a law, you have no jurisdiction. Let me say it again. You have no jurisdiction whatsoever. If it's taken to court, you will lose. So deny. Do not allow this gentleman or whoever he is, and do not allow the examples of Tiffany Bowie and the others, because all of them did not follow the law. Take it from me. I have the empirical data. We have to have a metrics. Once the metrics is created, we have to fulfill it. Go step by step. Don't break the law. These are outsiders mostly coming into the community to prey on the poor in the name of affordable housing. Affordable housing to whom? All these buildings were built by the Department of Defense. I worked for the Department of Defense. I know too much about these buildings. I know about bridge developers. I know about Hope SF. I do not trust them.
Thank you, caller. Your 3 minutes has expired.
Thank you.
Madam
Any
Chair,
other
we
call?
have an additional one more caller that had joined the queue. Please stand by. Welcome, caller. Your 3 minutes begins now.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Shauna Gates, and I work with the Public Works Infrastructure Task Force. My role is helping, along with Phillip, to implement the development agreement projects. I've worked with Phillip for the past 2 years, and in 4 of the development agreement projects, including 3 in Hope SF and 1 being Potrero Hope SF. As so many others have mentioned, I've seen Phillip's commitment to the success of these projects and really the respectfulness and the honoring of due process and really following the authority chain of who has authority to grant certain approvals. He champions both the project and also all the people involved, both development partners and city staff. He's one of the most positive people I know, as you can probably feel from his presentation. But I know he'll continue to champion this project and all of the people that he works with. Potrero Hope SF does face really unique challenges, and I believe Phillip is uniquely trained and poised to be able to help solve those. While Phillip's current department, the Office of Economic Workforce and Development, or OEWD, is tasked with helping implement these DA projects along with other city departments, they do not award contracts or grant approvals. Ultimately, the authority needed for these approvals are made by the Board of Supervisors, Planning Department, and other city agencies such as the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, Public Works, SFMTA, and others. Phillip's new role would be to help the development team adjust the designs and submissions in order to meet the city's requirements and standards. As many others have mentioned, I think just the focus should be highlighted on the fact that the Board of Supervisors has already granted approval through a development agreement for the Potrero developer to rebuild the Potrero area. And that's the major approval that will continue to be relied upon as the public and private partners continue to work together to implement those approvals. So Phillip's new position would be helping to implement what has already been approved, not competing for additional approvals. I'm hopeful that if that has not been clearly communicated in today's call, that subsequent documentation can demonstrate that. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Any more callers, moderator?
Please stand by. Madam Chair, there's no further callers in the queue.
Thank you. Public comment is closed for agenda item number 8. I want to express on behalf of my colleagues appreciation to Mr. Wong for attending today. And also your friends, your colleagues, it is well documented that you are well respected and well loved. This item will be continued to the January 13th meeting. So we'll see you again next year. I want to move up agenda item number 13, which is commendation for the executive director because of schedule change. A tight schedule. And I want to ask our Director Pelham to join us right here. While we as all of us know, Director Pelham will be leaving us in January, and today is her last meeting with us. That's why we wanted to take this opportunity, even though she does not like attention to herself, because she truly is a team player. But we want this opportunity for your commissioners to share our appreciation with you. So.
Yeah, I just want to say publicly, I have been so impressed. I've only been on the commission for less than a year, but from the beginning, I've been so impressed by you and everything that you've given to this commission and to the city, and appreciated not just the professionalism, but the manner in which you go about doing the work. And we're losing somebody who I'd hoped to work with for years. The city's losing somebody, and I wish you all the best of luck in the world, but it's a really sad day for me, and I hope a great one for you. So congratulations and thank you.
Yeah, I would echo that. It's been really an honor to work alongside you and learn from you in the short time that I've known you. You've been a great example of how to lead with kindness and grace, and so it's been really a pleasure to meet you, and I hope to continue learning from you. And yeah, we're just grateful for the time that we did get to spend time with you. So thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Bush and Commissioner Finlao.
This is Commissioner Bush. I'd just like to tell people what things were like before Director Pelham joined as our executive director. Because at that time, we had an executive director who had decided not to act in a case involving conflict of interest and unquestioned inappropriate activity. And that was brought to the attention of the commission by the FCCC, because the FCCC had recommended acting, and the then executive director had said, no, we're not going to act, we're going to let this whole thing expire, and then it'll be too late to act. Well, you can imagine how that went down with Paul Rennie and the members of the commission. Leanne Pelham was the antidote to that kind of behavior. And she also was not just willing to oversee wrongdoing, but began a process of implementing new staffing and new activity on the part of this commission. I believe the staffing level doubled, if not tripled, under her leadership. And the people that she hired have been outstanding people who came from areas with a deep knowledge and experience with ethics. She has added a great deal of value to the commission and its work, and I'm sure that wherever she goes, she will continue to add value, whether it's on ethics or some other topic. So, Director Pelham, thank you for the service you've given to the city and to ethics in particular, and thank you for the grace and goodwill that you brought to this job.
Okay. Commissioner Finlove?
Yeah, hi, Director Pelham. Part of the reason I wanted to be on the commission was to work with you, so I feel a little bit betrayed now that you're taking off after only, I've been here a few months, I guess longer than that now. But it's been so much fun to work with you since we worked together over a decade ago, not together, but in this field. And it's been thrilling to come full circle and work with you again in this capacity. I recommend you change your phone number because I will be calling you for substantive questions. And if you don't change it, I take that as a sign that you welcome those phone calls. But best of luck, and it's been really, really great working with you. Thank you for everything you've done for the city and the commission.
It takes a village to get anything done, but it also takes a leader who is visionary, who's passionate, who's collaborative, who has grace, who has the right temperament to really not only inspire herself, but inspire others to share her vision. So it is really appropriate for us to be here today to not to say goodbye to you, but to thank you for 6 years of the most instructive, constructive service that you have given to not just this commission, but to the city. Commissioner Bush talked about the staffing, but they're inspired by you. They follow the leader, and it takes a exceptional leader to really get the best out of her team, and you are that person. You have given exemplary leadership and service not only to us, but to the city and to the people of San Francisco. You are very much appreciated, loved, and will be missed. So it is, we just want to present you with a token of our appreciation. But not to worry, it's all within the gift limits. And that's why we could not afford the box, because that would be over the limit. According to, you guys want to present this?
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Sure, you can
you
do it.
and they will be presenting on behalf of Commissioners Bush and Finlove. They have not seen it. Now, this is a piece by a Bay Area artist, a woman's artist, just a token of our appreciation. Oh, sorry.
What am I doing? Upside down?
Upside down.
Oh,
Upside down.
So bad.
It may be bad luck. No, now that he's corrected, it's fine.
Okay.
According to her,
No, you
according to her,
Sorry.
just 2 more minutes. According to the artist, the paper is handmade. It represents strength, endurance, and the design that the paper represents integrity and connectivity. And the middle is a replica of an old Chinese coin worth nothing, so don't worry about that. And the color represents cleanliness, purity, and integrity. And that truly represents who you are. And I hope that you will find a place in your new venture or your home or wherever. Every time when you look at this, please be reminded of the 6 years of exceptional service you have given to us and the city, and you will be missed. But think of us when you see this, and we will always be thinking of you whenever we deliberate. interesting, challenging matters.
Thank
you, Madam
Thank you so much.
Executive Director.
Please use that as remember everything that she said that it represents, and I hope
It's fabulous.
Okay.
It really is quite
It's cool.
moving. No, thank you.
Can we take a picture? There's no box, but you can have a shot. Okay, you have to go.
Yeah, I have to go. I very much apologize, but I have to go. So carry on without me. I've communicated some of my feelings about the remaining agenda items to the chair, and take it from there. I'll see you. Happy holidays to everyone. Thank you especially to the staff. Goodbye. We'll see you, Leanne. Happy holidays to everyone. See you next year.
See you next year.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's resume to agenda item number 9, discussion and possible action on legislation to amend
Shirley, is
campaign
it-
finance disclaimer requirements to comply with court order.
Is there public comment on that?
I don't think so.
No, do we need to call for that?
Do we need to have public comment? Or just commendation of the ED? No, 13.
Yeah, yes, you do need public comment on that item.
Okay, my apologies. Okay, public comment, please. On agenda item number 13, commendation.
I'll make public comment. Sure. Since it's come up, and I do want to wish all the best to Director Pelham, and thank you for your remarkable and dedicated service to the commission and to the city. And it's been a pleasure working with you these years in my capacity in the mayor's office, working on ethics matters. And best of luck. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Moderator, can we open up for public comment on agenda item number 13, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are checking to see if there is any callers in the queue, and it looks like we have one caller. Please stand by. Welcome, caller. Your 3 minutes begins now. Caller, are you there? Okay, looks like it could possibly be a caller on the last agenda item
Okay.
that did not lower his hand. So at this time, there are no callers in the queue, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Public comment is closed. Let's go back to our agenda, which is now item number 9, discussion and possible action on legislation to amend campaign finance disclaimer requirements to comply with court order.
Great. Thank you, Shirley and commissioners. As described in the memo, there is some narrow legislation that was introduced by Supervisor Marr, which would be amending the disclosure requirements for campaign advertisements. With the passage of Prop F in 2014, voters required a second disclosure of campaign ad funders be included. However, in 2022 or 2020, Judge Breyer granted a preliminary injunction that rejected the disclosure of secondary contributors on print advertisements that are 5 inches by 5 inches, smaller ear advertisements, or spoken disclaimers that are 30 seconds or less. And since that injunction was issued, the city has not been able to enforce those provisions. The legislation that's been introduced by Supervisor Marr would amend the code to be in line with the court's order in that matter. And staff recommendation is to support the legislation introduced by Supervisor Marr.
Okay. Any questions, comments? It's pretty straightforward. If there's no comments, let's go to public comment, please.
Please stand by, Madam Chair, as we check for callers in the queue. Madam Chair, there's no callers in the queue for agenda item number 9.
Okay, agenda item number, let's go to,
Madam Chair, was there intent for a motion there?
oh, my apologies. Let's have entertain a motion to approve. I'll move. Any
I second.
Okay, motion is made and seconded. Roll call, please.
On the motion to approve, Commissioner Bush,
Aye.
Commissioner Flores-Bang,
Aye.
Commissioner Finliff,
Aye.
Chair Lee.
Aye.
Madam Chair, with 4 votes in the affirmative and 0 votes opposed, the motion is approved unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Now, agenda item number 10, which is discussion and possible action on draft behested payments regulations. Before we begin, Commissioner Romano needed to leave early today, but he wanted to ask if this could be tabled until January because he wanted to have some discussion around this, even though we've been discussing about this. Is there a time sensitivity around this?
Julie, when the ordinance was, or when the code was amended regarding behested payments several months ago, there was a provision added that the commission would enact regulations by the end of this year regarding behested payments. That's included in the code. I'm not sure what the, if any repercussions there are if that does not happen. I think the commission's been moving to enact these regulations. I don't believe there'd be a huge issue if this was taken up in January, but that would be beyond the time when the code does specify the commission would enact regulations, though.
Okay. Colleagues, we've had this discussion the last couple of meetings, so do you want to move forward with a vote, or do you want to wait for January to have the participation of Commissioner Romano? He basically said if there's a time sensitivity, we should just take action. So why don't we just take action right now? Do I have a motion to approve this? Okay, no, I'll move to approve this.
I'll second it.
Okay, let's open up for public comments, please.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Finlove?
I agree with your timing point. I did just have a question for staff, though, on the substance. So I don't know if that's now or at some other point, whenever you want to.
I also have
No,
one
why
quick
don't-
question.
Yeah, so why don't we have the questions and then open up for public comment and then vote?
Thank you. My question was just, Mr. Haining, in the materials you prepared, you noted that there were some adjustments to the at the best of language. And it wasn't clear to me what that was since we looked at this previously. So if you could just explain what that was, that would be great.
First, through the chair, the main change was following the last meeting from Commissioner Flores-Bang, the idea of the specification of the definition of at the request or suggestion of. There was language in there about the city official indicating that it would please them. That was removed per the commission's suggestion and tightened down to situations where it would clearly be beneficial and not just please the city official. Also, additional clarifying language was added to specify that copies of emails and other types of written communication would be a potential means for demonstrating that certain exceptions were applicable.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Flores-Bang?
Yes, my follow-up, thank you very much. This is very helpful, and thank you for making those revisions and incorporating my recommendations. I was wondering if it would be helpful, and this is something I'm open to hearing from my colleagues about, for this, the copies of emails or other written communications or other means, since that's pretty vague. I don't know if maybe we want to specify that the other means would still have to include a date or be time-stamped or include the recipient and sender. At least time-stamped may be helpful, but I'm open.
I mean, I think that could be added. I don't know if that would be necessary. I think, in an example that was being used, I think the, enforcement division would kind of look to that when evaluating if something was, effectively demonstrating. And, I think if you had a piece of paper that wasn't timestamped, that would probably not be that compelling to either the enforcement division, the director, or the commission should a matter come forward.
Okay. No other questions. Let's go for public comments, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are checking to see if there's callers in the queue who would like to make public comment on agenda item number 10. Please stand by. Madam Chair, we have one caller in the queue. Welcome, caller.
Hi,
Your 3 minutes begins now.
Hi, Commissioners. This is Debbie Lerman at the San Francisco Human Services Network. I'm calling because we still have continuing concerns about the impact of these regulations on nonprofit representatives who serve on city commissions. They often have a responsibility to raise funds for their nonprofits, and in many cases, the commissioner may be an executive director who has to lead their organization's fundraising efforts. If the regulations are unnecessarily prescriptive, they create a chilling effect on nonprofit staff's desire and ability to serve the city in these capacities. And we would urge you to hold off until January and have ethics staff specifically reach out to commissioners who work for nonprofits to make sure to solicit their input before finalizing these regulations. There are 3 specific regulations that impact this issue. The indirect solicitation regulation would bar a nonprofit serving commissioner from directing other staff to solicit or behested donations from an interested party. We agree commissioners should not directly solicit donations from interested parties and should not direct their staff to do so. But the proposed regulation has languages about soliciting donations from a group of parties that may contain an interested party. That's overly broad and vague. For example, it's unclear if it would prohibit a commissioner from telling their staff to seek donations from tech companies if just one of the many companies in San Francisco was an interested party. Secondly, there's a proposed regulation that states that a payment is made at the behest of an officer if the payment would be made under the control of the officer. It's defined very broadly, where the officer has the authority to authorize, command, order, require, etc. Regardless of whether the officer actually plays any role in soliciting that payment or even knows about it, the donor might even be a prior longtime supporter of the organization. Because the regulation is based on authority rather than actual involvement, it appears to create a barrier for the nonprofit staff to solicit funds from potential and even existing donors who happen to be interested parties. We agree the commissioner should not direct their staff to solicit from those parties, but the regulation goes too far because it doesn't allow the nonprofit's development staff to do their jobs in a way that sets up an ethical wall between the commissioner and the donor. The third issue is the public appeal regulation. If a nonprofit commissioner receives a response to a public appeal, they could respond only with factual information and cannot encourage the donation. It's not clear what encouraging means. Would even saying thank you and expressing appreciation be encouragement?
Thank you, caller. Your 3 minutes has expired.
Okay. Any other comments?
Madam Chair, there's no further callers in the queue.
Okay, and we have the mayor's representative, Mr. Hancock, here.
Good afternoon again, Chair Lee, members of the commission and staff. I just wanted to provide appreciation to the commission and the staff for all the hard work and effort that's gone into this process of sort of getting our arms around the new behested payments regime, the law, the amendments that were enacted this year, as well as the regulations. And I was able to work collaboratively with Mr. Canning on some suggestions regarding the regulations. They've mostly been adopted, and I think this set of regulations is in good shape. I don't really have concerns. a couple points. I do think it's positive that the language in 3.620-4 removing the comment that it would please an officer to receive a payment that was removed. I think it's sort of clear as it is now. In 3.620-6, the concept of soliciting behested payments valued at less than $1,000. There's basically, I guess, a presumption, unless the payment is specified, that the amount of the solicited payment is $1,000 or over. And it says that when it's not clear from the context and facts of the solicitation, the officer claiming to have solicited a payment valued at less than $1,000 bears the burden of proving that the amount solicited was less than $1,000. So I think the language about it not being clear from the context and facts is helpful. I would assume that would mean that the commission would take into account, the typical fair market value of, say, goods, in-kind donations that are being provided. If it's like a toy drive or something like that, clearly the items that are being solicited are, worth less than $1,000. Without the need for sort of further evidence on that. But I think that's something the commission could deal with as it came up. Ms. Lerman did mention the language in 3.620-2 for the definition of under the control or at the direction of. It includes payments where the officer has the authority to authorize, command, order, require, guide, or administer the payment. I'm assuming from the context, this means that the authority was actually exercised, that there isn't some sort of presumption that the department head or supervisor authorized a payment if there's sort of no other evidence that they were, involved in the solicitation, if it was really a staffer. But again, I don't think that would be an insurmountable challenge to interpreting that in practice. And I'm glad there's some important exceptions that remain in there regarding competitively awarded grants, responding to factual requests for information from charitable and philanthropic partners. And I would just like to raise the issue of training. And I know that every April, department heads and elected officials will be taking their annual ethics training. I hope that the scope of the amendments and the regulations will be included in that, and I'm happy to sort of participate in helping that process along. So thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no more public comment is closed. Let's do roll call on the motion, please.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Oh, is this Vice Chair Bush?
Yes, I keep trying to speak up. In reading through the language, I'm not sure that it covers family members who are uncompensated board members of nonprofits that receive directed behest payments. Does it?
I thought we did.
Commissioner Bush, are you referring to whether if a city official were to solicit a behested payment for one of their family members, if that would be a prohibited solicitation?
No, not to a, no. Let's take the Parks Alliance, which, as we know, was a convent for a lot of Muhammad Daruzani. It was behested by someone who was a city official, and that official's spouse was the president of the Parks Alliance. Was that legal or not? They were uncompensated as president of the Parks Alliance Board of Directors.
Yeah, I'm not sure on the specifics of that, Commissioner Bush.
What is it that you don't understand? The Parks Alliance has an executive director of its board. That director is not compensated. However, an elected official has directed behest payments to go to that nonprofit where the official spouse is the chair of the board. That seems like a questionable relationship.
That sort of relationship wouldn't be the subject of the behested payment rules. The behested payment rules prohibit soliciting behested payments from certain interested parties, and they don't get into a matter of like who the recipients are or the connection the recipient of a behested payment might have to the city official making that solicitation.
What about a nonprofit that's engaged in political activity and the elected official solicits contributions to that nonprofit who then spends it on political activity?
Same as before, Commissioner Bush, the behested payment rules are about who is being solicited, not where the payments end up going. So that would not be within the scope of the behested payment rules.
All I can say is that that's been a loophole that's been used for years in city government. Has that loophole been closed? You seem to be telling me that loophole doesn't exist, but I'm saying it does.
This is Commissioner Phillip, if I might. Commissioner Bush, I want to make sure I understand the point you're raising. Are you talking about a situation where a city official asks a third party to make a political donation for that city official?
No. I'm saying a city official asks an interested party to make campaign contributions to a nonprofit that's not directly engaged on behalf of that official.
So I think the city official is talking to an interested party that might be a prohibited behested payment, irrespective of where the payment is going. And I think that's what Mr. Koenig is saying, or, well, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but is that right?
Correct, yeah. So the soliciting the behested payment, or soliciting the behested payment from the interested party is what would be prohibited.
So what are we saying about nonprofit entities? Let's take Spur as an example. Spur is a nonprofit that is a mix on its board of city officials and private for-profit companies. People solicit contributions to Spur. Spur, in turn, makes contributions for political activity, most especially ballot measures. So is that allowable or not?
For individual city officials, if Spur was an interested party for them, they would be prohibited from soliciting payments from Spur.
I'm sorry, I was interrupted. What did you say?
If a city official has Spur or an entity as an interested party, they would be prohibited from soliciting payments from that interested party, regardless of where they are going.
They're on the board, Spur. The city official is on the board of Spur.
So is the concern that they would be soliciting the entity on which they're a board member?
Get a couple questions, get a couple minutes to your time.
I'm on with somebody. I can't do it now.
But it's been all day.
I know
Commissioner Bush,
No.
can you clarify specifically what concern you have specifically regarding the behested payment regulations?
Specifically to behested payments.
Dealing
A
with
city
the
official
nonprofit.
seeks behested payments, going to an entity where the city official has a say over how the money is spent. or whose spouse has a say over it.
Yes, Commissioner Bush, same as before, the behested payment rules don't address kind of where the money goes. It's, you know.
At the end of the day, this needs to be put over. I think it should be held over. I'm not comfortable at this point.
Specifically, what are you uncomfortable with? Are you uncomfortable with the nonprofit organization whose board members include city officials who are asking for behested payments? Is that the issue?
I'm uncomfortable that a city official is asking for behested payments to an entity where their spouse is uncompensated but serving as a director.
And Commissioner Bush, are you referring to where they're soliciting that payment from someone who is an interested party?
They could be.
Well, if they're an interested party, they'd be prohibited from making that solicitation. If they're not an interested party, it would be outside of the scope of the behested payment rules.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry. Idea how long it'll be? 20 minutes. Well, I need to look at this more closely, okay?
Okay.
There's no reason to rush this to this meeting.
Mr. Canning, can you find out if we were to miss the deadline, that is December 31st of this year, if we did not take any action, what specific penalty will this commission face?
Yes, Joe, that also might be a question that the deputy attorney could speak to.
Oh, okay.
Commissioners, Deputy City Attorney Brad Rusty, the code requires the commission to adopt regulations on this ordinance prior to January 1st, 2023. It doesn't include a penalty, but conceivably someone could go to court and seek a writ to force you to adopt the to comply with the ordinance.
And furthermore, generally, as you know, an act of good faith, I think a lot of the stakeholders who have been very engaged with behested payments over the last year, I think would probably appreciate the commission moving in that direction. And then also, I'll point out that the regulations could be, revised further by the commission at a future date, should additional clarification be desired.
And I think we've had discussion on this matter for several times already. So if there's no more public comment, let's take a roll call, please.
Madam Chair, looks like Commissioner Bush does have another comment to make.
Okay.
I'm trying to speak, but no one seems to hear me.
No, we hear you.
We can hear you now, Commissioner Bush.
I'm trying to avoid naming the city officials who are doing that and how it results in a conflict that's not a conflict under the law, but a conflict of common sense, and which calls into disrepute the Ethics Commission. So that's what I'm doing. But if you want me to spell it out and start naming names, I will do that.
Commissioner Bush, we have before us a motion to approve the specific draft regulations on the behested payments, which has been discussed by this commission at various times. And we are faced with a deadline because this has been delayed, not delayed, but continued for a couple of meetings. And this commission will need to act by the end of this year. Otherwise, we would face potential legal consequences. And my understanding is there will be other opportunities for the members of the public to express their views and their opposition or comments to the draft regulations, and at which time we as individuals can also participate during those deliberations. So I I want us to take the position today. We can vote yay or nay, and then we can move forward. But right now, we are dealing with a legal deadline that we need to take action today. So if we can take the roll, please.
On the
If
motion,
if Commissioner Romano is not there to vote, and I vote no, that means that at best you'll have 3 votes yes. And 3 votes is not enough for a measure.
Do we need a majority or do we need 4 votes?
You need a supermajority for a change in the rules.
Shirley, if I might interject to respond to Mr. Bush's question. No, these are regulations, so these do not require a supermajority. It requires a simple majority of 3 votes of those members present.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's,
Madam Chair, may I just speak very quickly?
please.
This is Commissioner Finlev. Commissioner Bush, I think you raised some really good points. I think some of them are outside the behested payments issues that we're looking at right now. But I think if we were to approve this today, it in no way prevents us from addressing your concerns at a future meeting. Nothing, if we approve this as written today, we are still able to amend the regulations going forward to get at what you're getting at, and frankly, to open a separate discussion about the issues that you are raising to the extent that they're beyond the scope of the behested payments issues that we're talking about today. So I'm prepared to vote yes, but that in no way means that I am not appreciating the concerns you're raising, and that I don't think they should be raised. I think they should be raised, but I don't think that should prevent us from executing our legal obligation to move this forward today. Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate the spirit of your remarks, but I would note that we are in December, and December is the period in which the largest number of contributions get made. And so it's not just any month, but it's this particular month that creates a greater opportunity for the problems that I've identified to become manifest.
Shirley,
Do you have any more comments? Otherwise, we're going to take the vote.
just regarding the timeline, even if the commission acts today, there will be 60 days where the regulations have to be with the Board of Supervisors before they become effective. So there's still 60 days away from the earliest these regulations would become effective, even if enacted today.
And again, when they go to the Board of Supervisors, any individuals, including any one of us as individuals, can speak because they do have public comments.
Well, the board does not need to act on the regulations. The regulations would be, if the commission approves the regulations today, they just need to be sent to the Board of Supervisors, where the board has 60 days to potentially veto, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
But people can
They could talk to the Board of Supervisors.
express the views to the Board of Supervisors. Okay. Okay, so let's take a roll, please.
on the motion to approve, Commissioner Bush,
No.
Commissioner Flores-Fang,
Aye.
Commissioner Finlev,
Aye.
Chair Lee.
Aye.
Madam Chair, with 3 votes in the affirmative and 1 vote opposed, the motion is carried by 3-1 with Commissioner Bush in the dissent.
Okay, thank you. Now, agenda item number 13, which is discussion and possible action on items for future meetings. I do have a question for Director Pelham. In your report, because we do have to hold a separate meeting in January for public hearing on our budget, on our proposed budget, and you have proposed January 20th. Is that a set date, or can we entertain a alternative date, because I will not be in town that day?
Shirley, yes, I have an answer for your question. I think we have a technology assist swap that we need to do. If we could take just a pause of 1 minute
Okay.
to enable our staff to
Okay.
make sure that we're providing that seamless support.
Okay.
Thank you. Are we clear to proceed?
Not to my knowledge. It looks like there could be a transfer. Basically, Jared had to hang up, and it looks like Alvin might be assisting him, conferencing him into a teleconference. Please stand by.
I think we should go ahead and proceed. We're having a slight technology issue connecting Commissioner Bush, but in the interest of time, our staff is still working to connect him back by voicemail so he can participate fully. But your question, Chair Lee, was about the January 20th meeting. That's a special meeting on the calendar currently for the budget discussion that the commission would have on departmental budget priorities. Yes, that is something that we are trying to find a room for that meeting. We understand from the city building services that there may not be a time frame on that date that works for the commission. So we're checking to see, and I don't think we have confirmation yet, but the short answer is if you're not available and that room is not available, we would still be looking for another date to try to accommodate a budget hearing during that time frame so that we can meet the requirements of the budget ordinance.
And if a majority of my colleagues can make a January 20th meeting instead, that would be great, because I will be on travel from the 20th to February 8th.
Okay.
Is
So
that
it
our
sounds like
next
the meeting prior to the week of the 20th, but prior to the 20th might be workable.
Yeah.
So what we can do is poll the commissioners once we know what the availability is and connect with you to confirm a date, and then we'll make sure to post that on the commission's website with the updated information.
Thank you very much. Any suggestions or recommendations for this item for future meetings? Commissioner Bush, do you want to propose any agenda items for future meetings?
No.
Okay. Okay. Public comments, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are checking to see if there are any callers in the queue. As a reminder, members of the public who are already online and wish to provide public comment on agenda item number 13, discussion and possible action on items for future meetings, should now dial *3 or raise your hand in WebEx if you have not already done so to be added to the public comment line. Please stand by. Madam Chair, there's no callers in the queue.
Okay. Agenda item number 14, which is adjournment. Oh, I'm sorry. Additional opportunity for public comment on matters not appearing on the agenda.
Please stand by while we're checking for callers in the queue. Madam Chair, there's no callers in the queue.
Thank you. Now, agenda item number 15, which is adjournment. Thank you very much, fellow commissioners, and thank you, members of the public and our city government colleagues for attending today's meeting. Have a wonderful weekend and happy holidays.
Thank you, everyone.
Great job, everyone. Take care. Happy holidays.